welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 141st take, live from the HF Barcelona studios of Euless, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be an awesome show, a fantastic show, a show that's better with volume. Live loud. I think we're going to be talking about that tonight. So it is going to be my pleasure to introduce our guest, but before we get to proper introductions, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible, and that, of course, is our sponsors. Tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate announced just a few days ago that they are now shipping the Underground Dojo Dogma Sungrown to Drew Diplomat retailers nationwide. The Dojo Dogma Sungrown was announced during the DE Summer Takeover campaign, and it was highlighted on Freestyle Live. Underground Dojo Dogma Sungrown is a 5x54 box press Robusto chosen by Drew Estate Master Blender Willie Herrera and the Cigar Dojo Master Sensei himself, Erica Tormson, for its bolder profile. The Sungrown Dojo Dogma features an Ecuadorian Sumatra sun-grown Kappa, the Connecticut River Valley stop-cut cured sun-grown Habano binder, and a complementing powerhouse blend of Nicaraguan premium filler tobaccos. One leaf of extensively aged Ligero from the Nueva Segovia region along the border of Honduras has been carefully selected to enhance this particular blend. So go to your Drew Diplomat retailer today and pick up the Underground Dojo Dogma Sungrown. Tonight's show is also sponsored by Oveja Negra Brands, 4 unique companies who share a passion to provide innovative cigars for the next generation of cigar enthusiasts. Black Label Trading Company, Blackwork Studio, Dissident, and Emilio are combining premium tobacco with an artisanal touch. Oveja Negra, where art and tobacco collide. Join the flock and visit ovejanegracigars.com to learn more. And welcome everyone to our 141st take. It is my pleasure to welcome in our guest this evening. So without further ado, tonight's guest is sponsored by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living united. Mr. George Rami, Camacho Cigars. George, how we doing tonight?
What's happening? I'm doing great, brother. Thank you for having me. What's going on over there in Texas with you?
Oh, man, it is my pleasure. It is hot still, even though it's October. It's like 90 degrees today. And I was hoping to start tonight's show by talking about what a great game it was between our two teams. And then that didn't happen. You guys just absolutely trounced us. So congratulations on the win.
It started good for you guys. You guys had a good, 10-point lead, but then it's just, these guys, they went into high gear and I couldn't watch the whole game. I just watched the beginning. I'm like, oh, Lord. And then I come back and I saw a notification on my phone. I'm like, what? It's crazy, man. Those guys were
out
of
proportion in a hurry. It was,
and I guess crazy. It was good for Florida football too. The Dolphins, did I think it's like 24 to
nothing
against the
24
Jets.
to nothing against the Jets.
That's crazy. That's unheard of for the Dolphins.
The Jets are awful. I mean, with all respect to our the Miami fans out there, like the Jets are just terrible.
Exactly.
But it was cool. It was actually kind of cool that in the blowout, because it was a blowout, they actually, Tua Tagovailoa made an appearance. So, I mean, he was the 5th round draft pick. So that was kind of nice to see their guy. They didn't even think he was going to make there was a chance that he wouldn't even make the field this year. And there he was coming out to kind of do a little mop up duty, not do too strenuous, but it was nice to kind of see that in action, to see what a preview of what the Miami Dolphins will be like.
It was a good day for Florida football. It was good. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, and the Tampa Bay Rays are in the World Series, so that, I mean, you guys are just cooking on all cylinders here.
Yes, man. Yes. By all means.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about the cigars that we're going to be smoking tonight. You've already lit up. I'm waiting because I wanted to show off the box here.
Oh, there you go.
And it looks like, so let's go ahead and, so we are going to be smoking the same thing tonight. And it is the new and the latest and greatest from Camacho, the Nicaraguan. So that is awesome.
The Camacho Nicaragua.
Yes, the Camacho Nicaragua. And I know we're going to be diving into this in just a few minutes, but the same classic, what has become classic packaging from you guys. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited to crack this box open and smoke a Robusto size. I know you favor the Toros, so I know you lit up a Toro for us.
The Toro, it's just my favorite size on pretty much most of our lines. I do have some favorites on some other ones, and then some other lines that we have don't have Toros. But but so I tend to go with another size than that one. But if our line has a Toro size, that's usually my favorite.
Now, I'm not going to start off the show by giving you crap, George, but I know that when Camacho relaunched, you guys had Corona sizes, and I know those had to go by the wayside. We all have to make
Yes,
sacrifices in this business, but you personally, I'm just curious. I know you're a Toro guy, so but were you a fan of the Coronas?
100%, 100%. And the one that I miss the most is the triple Maduro Corona. The triple Maduro Corona.
Oh, I remember
Yes.
that being so stellar.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
it was delicious. And then obviously, the Connecticut for a quick smoke. Now I have to, go for the machitos, which is a little bit smaller than that, that I'd like. But yeah, so the Corona sizes, unfortunately, it just they didn't move as much as we wanted them to. So we wanted to, kind of focus on the sizes that did move. So unfortunately, we had to let those go. A little while ago.
Yeah.
But it's just we gotta sell what moves, man. And then the Coronas, no. But I personally love the Coronas. I like the Corona size in a lot of brands. Lawn still sizes too, Panatellas. I just think that it's such an elegant, size if it's rolled well.
Right.
It is just it's a great experience.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat you up on the Lancero bit because I know that that's been exhausted on some other platforms. And although I do have my boy Sean Miles in the room, and him and I are members of the Lancero Legion, but I know you've been asked that question quite a bit, so we'll put that one to rest for
Yeah.
tonight. But I will be diving into this blend here in just a little bit. But I wanted to. I seem like everyone's been congratulating. It's 4 months in it all already. But congratulations on being a new father. That's
Uh,
fantastic.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's quite the experience. I waited a while, to pull the trigger on that, and nobody really prepares you, right? You can prepare by obviously having a home for the baby and all that stuff, but what comes after, like your day to day, your lack of sleep, the lack of peace around the house because you have a baby crying and all that stuff. It's quite challenging, but it's a great experience. So it's parallels with just the how people say, "Oh my God, you're blessed." We're blessed. Yes, I truly feel blessed to have a beautiful baby boy, Sebastian. He's 4 months, 4 months, 4.5 months actually, and it's just been quite the experience, man. Quite the experience. Everybody's tells you, oh, once you don't really know, and you don't experience that feeling until you have your own kid. There's no question about that. I didn't grow up with little kids around me. So now I'm just having a baby. Thankfully, my girl is very prepared. She comes from a big family, 12 brothers and sisters. So she grew up
Oh,
having kids. So it was just like a walk in the park for her. And I'm like, what do we do now with this little thing that's
wait,
crying?
what do you mean? I have to change his diaper? Didn't we just
It's
do
like,
that an hour ago?
what did it? He's got to eat again. Yeah, he just finished the bottle. It's stuff like that, man. But it's good. I can't complain. We can't complain. It's been quite a journey, man, and especially in this time, that it's so crazy, for lack of
Yeah.
a better word, in terms of with work, the whole COVID, my trips were canceled. I couldn't even finish the Camp Camacho, and she was pregnant. So whatever I had planned, it did not work out the way that I had planned, but for the better, because I was able to be available the last few months of the pregnancy, and then
Right.
obviously the critical times, which is when you have a newborn in the house, right? That you just need to attend to them almost 24/7, right? So that it worked out for the better, at least in that sense.
One of the things I absolutely hated about being a new parent was how every piece of cliched advice that I received, unsolicited, solicited, it didn't matter, was 100% fucking true. And it was just the most irritating thing ever. Because like
Yes.
everybody was right. And I was like, yep, that happened. Yep, that happened. Yes, that's absolutely right. So it's my turn. You can't get this time back, George. That's a
No,
cliched version, but
yeah,
it's
you cannot
100%
get it
true.
back. They grow up so fast, you know, and that is no BS. They do grow up so fast. Like right before the show, I was talking to that he's teething. He already has two little, you know,
It's
teeth
crazy.
on his bottom gum, and it's like, oh my god, this is crazy. You know, his little shoes don't fit. Oh, that's the other. You know, if anybody's out there just starting to, you know, planning to have kids, don't buy a lot of newborn clothes or shoes or anything.
Oh, let grandparents buy that stuff, man. Yeah,
Oh
don't.
my
Yeah, go
god,
through
it's
money.
crazy.
It's like
It's
burning
crazy.
money.
Even though babies' clothes is not expensive, but that's you get carried away, and after a while, it's like we have two big bins. I think we counted about, I don't know. I think it was probably from 0 to 3 months, probably like 150 outfits that don't fit him anymore. You know.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's it's crazy, man. How I think I probably just grew up with, you know, in diapers and stuff, because I don't remember having a lot of stuff, you know, in the pictures. All the pictures that I have, it's either with like some like little customs or something, or just
Just a
in
diaper.
diapers. In diapers. Those are my baby pictures. You
Yeah.
know, just in
I mean,
diapers.
I grew up in hot West Texas, man. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
clothing's kind of optional when you're a baby. So.
Yeah, true, true.
All right, that's awesome, Georgia, and congratulations, man. And I know I know that you named your son Sebastian,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really excited to kind of talk to you about this because I know my audience knows that I'm a big history nerd, and I'm into quotes and etymology of stuff, um and so I love the story of Saint Sebastian. But before we go into this, I want to know what was kind of the reasoning for naming your son Sebastian. It's a unique name. I really like it. You don't
Yeah,
hear it very often.
and that's the feedback that we've been getting. First of all, I don't, within, you know, 1 or 2 degrees of separation, I don't know anybody the name Sebastian, right? So I didn't want to name anybody my son with, you know, a name of a close friend or something. That, you know, so Sebastian was perfect. Also, thinking in the future, right, with you know how society is and everything, I wanted to find a name that was just, you know, not easy to get bullied around. You know, uh, I when I was growing up with George, and then, you know, George of the Jungle here, all this stuff. It's just, you know, we tried to avoid a little bit of that, and then even the nicknames for that name, right? They're cool names, so it's very important to have at least that type of help, because I mean, you know, I know that there's some people with some first names out there that it's like, whoa, man, why did
Yeah,
mother do that to you, bro?
yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were planning
Kids
this
are
way
already
before
mean.
you were born, so it's
Kids
like
are already mean. They're gonna pick on you no matter what. They're gonna find something, but don't make
and
it
then
easy.
don't
Don't.
make it easy. Come
Yeah.
on, don't open that door. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that was just that was me. You know, thinking ahead. I'm like, okay, how can we just? I'm trying to prepare his life the best way possible, right? Starting with the name and all that stuff. But yeah, I just think it's a very unique name. We call him Sebas, you know, just because obviously in Spanish, Sebas, Sebastian, it's written the same in English and Spanish,
Oh,
right?
nice.
That was the other thing, that it's like Sebastian, Sebastian, it's the same thing. So just that makes it easier. My last name is Rami, so Sebastian Rami. It's a very simple, short. I don't know. That was just me thinking, but it's stuck, and we love the name. You know, he's got his little name, you know, on the wall in his little room and everything, and he just stares at it, and it's cool, man.
Yeah.
There was no other reason behind it. I mean, I know we were talking a little bit about it before the show, which that made me curious, you know, but there was no other reason other than just a cool, you know, kind of manly name
Hmm.
that kind of stuck with us. You know, and we had a couple other ones, but the main one was like, I don't want to have the name of my son just, you know, just like I said, I don't know anybody with the name of Sebastian that is that close to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because other than your son, I only know of one other Sebastian. I went to college with, well, actually two. I went to college with one, but we weren't friends or anything. He lived 2 doors down from me in my dorm. Um, and Sebastian Decoupe of Cavalier Geneva Cigars. So
Okay, yeah.
that's the only those the only Sebastians that I've run into in my and the middle name of the classic composer, Johann Sebastian Bach. That's it. That's it. That's all I know.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No,
but
but it's a nice name, man.
yeah.
But what you were mentioning.
Yeah, well, because I'm a huge fan of and like I said, I'm a huge fan of history and etymology and things like that. And um, I I was I have an interesting religious background. I was raised Catholic, and I've always found the stories of patron saints to be just utterly fascinating. And and my sister is a registrar, which is basically a really blase name for a curator at a beautiful art museum in
Okay.
New York, the Whitney. I mean, she's incredibly smart and brilliant. She's awesome. And but she introduced me to art, and one of the most classic subjects in art, in classic art, other than things to deal with the crucifixion and with Jesus, is there's several paintings and pieces of art done on Saint Sebastian, and so that got me looking into the history of it. This was way before tonight's show and way before
Uh-huh.
you and I know each other, but and Saint Sebastian was a Roman captain of the Praetorian Guard. Like, this was a big deal. So in the days of the Roman Empire, he was named the captain, so the head of this prestigious Praetorian Guard, right? And the Roman Emperor Diocletian and the other high ups didn't know that he was a Christian. And back then, being Christian, I mean, that was
Yeah.
the worst thing in the world that you could be. I mean, they were persecuted, and I mean, horrific things happening to Christians all over the Roman Empire. And he was a Christian, and he was named the head of the Praetorian Guard. When they found this out, and when he started speaking out about his beliefs in Jesus, they tied him to a tree and attempted, and I say attempted to execute him, and he was shot several times with arrows.
Oh wow.
He survived, and by Saint Irene of Rome, who's
Hmm.
actually saved him, and that's the typical classic depiction in the art and everything. Really fascinating story. And then
That's interesting.
so what does he do, Sebastian? What does he do? So Sebastian recovers from this, right? He recovers from all these wounds, and he goes right back to Diocletian, the emperor of Rome, and starts preaching at him again and telling him that he needs to repent from his sins and all this stuff. So he calls out the guy who tried to execute him, and then he gets clubbed to death. Like,
Oh
total
man.
total badass. Like,
Yeah, total badass,
yeah,
and then
like
the typical never give up type of thing.
exactly.
Awesome. Wow.
So
Yeah, that's I didn't know that.
great story. So today he's known as among many things, because that's the other thing about the Catholic Church. The saints are patron saints of like a long list of things, and some of them are really random and weird.
Hmm.
But his are actually pretty tied in, pretty normal. Like we talked about him being about. He's obviously the patron saint of soldiers. Makes sense, right? He's a Roman soldier.
Yeah.
Athletes, which kind of goes a little bit hand in hand. He's also the patron saint of Holy Christian Death, persecuted Christians. Totally makes sense. And he's also the patron saint. This is interesting enough, because I know you grew up in South America,
Hmm.
although not Brazil. He's the patron saint of Rio de Janeiro.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So,
Now that you mention it, yes, that's true.
oh, in archers. Yes.
Huh.
That's like irony, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's ironic there.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. San Sebastian. Interesting. I'm gonna have to do a
Yes.
little more research on that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, read the whole story. It's very fascinating, and yeah, just really cool stuff. And
Total badass.
yeah, exactly. So
See, so even it has a Sebastian has a cool background story with his name
exactly,
too.
exactly,
Huh.
100%. So, appreciate everyone kind of going down some history lane with us. But so I know I know that I know that you're sipping on some really fantastic whiskey tonight. So why don't you show that off? Because the next
Yeah. So
subject
it's
that we're going to talk about here.
this one it's a Pureless Rye. I don't know if you can see it there because I have the light here. There you go. Pureless Rye. Um, this one I didn't purchase myself. It was gifted to me by my friend Tom Fisher from Bourbon Blog. Apparently, this one it's kind of hard to get a hold of. I'm not a huge rye fan, But this one and Woodford Reserve Rye are probably two of my favorite ones. Then again, I didn't, when I was doing my road tours and stuff, I was venturing off into the bourbons and stuff, but never the rye. But this one is just delicious, man. It's very potent, pungent, but it's not overwhelming. It goes very well with the Nicaragua. It's probably the fourth or fifth time that I pair it with the Nicaragua. So this one's pretty good.
See, as far as whiskeys, I always, a lot of people, especially in the cigar industry. And so here's tonight's question. We're going to talk about some pairings. And I was part of an interesting discussion a few nights ago about pairings with cigars, and we kind of boiled down to some pretty like basics of do's and don'ts. And
Mhm.
but I when it comes to whiskey, I feel like the people in the cigar industry are like all about that bourbon. Like bourbon is like king, and
Yes.
even then, like then there's the other people who are like Scotch, Irish whiskey. Some talk about Canadian,
Mhm.
and then skip about 10 other levels, and then people start really talking about rye. And I feel like rye is really underrated.
It is. It is. I'm not a huge, connoisseur, like I said, in different types of different brands of that produce rye. But I think it's the flavor that it has. I don't know how to describe it, and it kind of like coats the back of your palate with this dry, but sensation, right? That that's what I kind of on some of the different ones that I had that's what I for example, I'm a huge fan of bullet bourbon, right?
Yes,
But
and
I am not I'm not a big fan of their rye.
I agree as
Yeah,
well.
it's not which is another one. Angel's Envy. I don't like their rye. I love their bourbon, but not their rye. So it's kind of like hit or miss with me. I did learn a lot about bourbon and tried all different kinds of bourbons, which in fact, that's why my bar is full of bourbons now. When I was doing the road tours with American Barrel Age, and then the first road tour that we did was with Torch It Up. So we kind of did a sponsored tour with Bullet Bourbon. So that's where I got to have cases and cases of the Bullet
Oh,
Rye.
geez, drank
And
your weight several times in bullet then.
yeah, it was the bullet, and then my favorite one that they have, which actually I went to Total Wine the other day and I saw they have some other different ones that they just came out with. But it's just the bullet 10. The
Hmm.
bullet 10, that is my favorite one when it comes to the bullets. I mean I'll drink the regular bullet, but not the rye for some reason. I'm not a huge fan of that one. But this Pureless Rye, like I said, I haven't seen him in my local liquor stores. So I may have to call Tom and be like, hey, hook it up with more bottles. But this one is pretty good in particular, and just particularly it pairs really well with this Nicaragua.
Well, you were kind enough to give me some Camacho Nicaragua, so
Hmm.
um, have Tom send some Peerless my way too.
Yeah,
Just
right. That way, exactly,
we'll
exactly. Yeah,
we'll get a really nice consensus opinion.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
um, no, so it's interesting that that you mentioned Bullet, because I still go every time someone talks about Bullet, I go back to the story. I'm obviously when I work retail, I'm always in the humidor for the most part, but every once in a while I do serve a beverage or so. And this one guy, I say, hey, what can I get you? He's like, yeah, I'd love a really good bourbon. I said, okay, great. Do you have one in mind, or would you like me to recommend one for you? He says, I would really love that Bulliet.
The
And I was like,
bullet.
the what? The Bulliet. I was like, I don't what? I don't think. And he says it a couple more times, and I was like, are you talking about Bullet? And he's like, no, I'm pretty sure it's Bulliet because it's spelled. He even spelled it for. I was like,
Yeah,
no,
he
that's
spells
Bullet.
like
Yeah, it's
that.
Bullet.
That's
It's Bullet
it's
County,
bullet.
Kentucky is where it's from. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's pronounced Bullet. I said, yeah. He's like, oh my gosh, I feel like an idiot.
Yeah.
And I didn't make him feel like an idiot. I just was like the Bullet. I felt
Like
stupid. Yeah,
bullet. What?
what? But as we digress in here, I wanted to talk a little bit about pairings because I know Jack Heyer is in the chat, by the way, and he says you're the greatest drinker of all time. So
Oh, I see. Oh,
so
Lord,
so
Jack and the Johnny Showers. I see him here.
um
That's my specialty. Yes.
so I know this subject is near and dear to your heart, but if I could give you the world of beverage, okay, to choose from, okay, the world of beverage, okay, Oh, I'm gonna go along with this too. What beverage is like as a generalization, not an absolute, but a generalization, terrible to pair with cigars, the king of pairing with cigars, and the overrated pairing with cigars. So terrible, the king, and overrated.
Terrible. Hmm.
And if you want, I can go first because I have a list.
Okay, go first with your terrible.
Okay, so like I said, I was part of
Let's
this
see if we
discussion the
we
other
agree
night.
on that.
Yeah, I was part of this discussion the other night. I was actually with John Carney, the vice president of
Yeah, yeah,
sales
yeah.
with La Flor Dominicana, and we were talking about because John's a big wine guy and we like wine together and everything. But we both agree, though, even though we were big fans of wine, that overall, wine is terrible, particularly white wine, but wine in
Yes.
general, as a generalization, wine is a terrible pairing with cigars because the tannins and then the dry. You mentioned the dryness of rye, but I mean it's a
Mm-hmm.
different type of
It's a
dryness with
different. Yes,
wine.
exactly. Yeah.
There is that the sweetness doesn't coat your palate like a rye does. And yeah, we just both kind of agreed like we love wine, and we smoke cigars with wine, but like, overall, as a generalization, wine is just not a very
I
good
I
pairing.
do I do like to do. It's not that I've done an official pairing or anything, but I like to, and not one wine in particular, but at least a type that I like is just a it could be any type of Cabernet with our triple Maduro. That combination I like.
Okay.
I would not drink any red wine with the Connecticut or the Corojo
Oh
or
gosh.
Nicaragua or anything like that. But the triple Maduro, especially in the torpedo, the figurado size that we have, that one I tend to, and I think I've posted it a couple times, and I've mentioned that pairing being one of my favorite ones. That I like. I don't like to pair it. I haven't tried wine with many other cigars, other than obviously our stuff, Avo, Davidoff, Camacho. But my favorite pairing with red wine with Cabernet is the triple Maduro. That one. Other than that, like I don't like cigars with champagne, for example. Not that's not really a pairing that I like. So my worst, I think, and I've tried it a couple of times, is with you maybe disagree with this, but it's with gin. I'm not really a huge fan of cigars and gin. I've tried a couple different times. Not really a huge fan in my personal opinion.
Yeah. No,
You know.
I'm a big fan of gin, personally.
Yes.
I like gin. It has to be the right cigars. Like for example, some of the Avo cigars
Mm-hmm.
that have like the Peruvian tobacco in it, that have that kind of floral citrusy note, go
Yeah.
really, in my opinion, go really well with gin. Um,
I could probably do a Camacho Ecuador with gin maybe, but overall, it's just I'm not a huge fan
yeah,
of
yeah.
gin in general, you know. And that's the only one that kind of like it doesn't really click, you know.
Okay. All right.
Um,
So on the hot seat, what pairing is king? What pairing is king with cigars?
if you ask me, I'm a very simple guy when it comes to that. I love, and pretty much I pair all my cigars with at least I give it a shot with my Johnny Walker. I know it's a blended Scotch and blah blah blah, and may not be this limited edition bottle that came from the casks of whatever, but that pairing I love, right? Um, that is just my go-to. If I don't have, and I have a lot of bottles that I've collected throughout times and with the pairings and all that stuff, and that's my go-to all the time. When I'm a little overwhelmed with, what am I gonna drink? I go with the Johnny, right?
Right.
And there's a few people. Jack knows that pretty well. When I do my Johnny showers in Honduras, but Johnny Walker Black. That's just it's my favorite one. I've been drinking it for probably I don't know 20 years maybe, you know, and
Oh,
I'm 35.
I'm gonna break your heart in just a second here. I also
Right.
have a very simple pairing that I think is king as well.
Hmm.
And I agreed with someone else that I was speaking with the other night. It was a couple of us and John Carney, but coffee. I think
Oh,
I
I
think
thought we were
coffee and
talking about
cigars.
it. It's wait, you don't like coffee or you like
No,
coffee?
I do. I think coffee is
Oh,
king.
it's amazing.
I think
Yes. Oh, I thought we were talking about spirits only.
no, no,
Yes,
no. The world
coffee.
of beverage, like everything,
Oh,
everything.
wow. Then
So
yeah, I mean coffee. So Johnny Walker slash coffee,
coffee, yeah,
definitely.
nice. Okay,
And just black coffee. I don't like to put
yeah.
anything else on my coffee unless maybe a Splenda or two. And especially I don't know if you've gotten to try it if you had gone down to Honduras, but it's just Honduran coffee, like freshly brewed Honduran coffee with like a Corojo that just came from the factory. That is an
Ooh,
outstanding combination,
sign me up.
early in the morning with that Honduran coffee that is just sweet by nature, basically. We don't put anything when we brew it down at the house in Honduras. We don't put anything on it, and it's just delicious. Coffee, yes, and especially in our office, we probably every single office has an espresso machine or and we have a brewer in the little common area. Everybody drinks coffee. It's a tremendous pairing with cigars. Definitely goes hand on hand.
So sign me up, absolutely. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm in. So overrated. So which beverage? And again, this is the world now since I just to reset it here. So not just
Hmm.
spirits, but overrated.
Overrated. I don't know. I think it's a very hmm interesting because I've tried. I was gonna say tequila, but it's depending on which type of tequila. Hmm, I don't know. You got me on that one. What would you think it's overrated?
See, I'm gonna break your heart, man. Scotch.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, this is a generality. It's just not an
I was a
absolute.
blended scotch.
See, I
But yeah.
think that the reason why I think Scotch is overrated is because when I first started in the cigar industry, and when I first started smoking cigars, like that's what, and I mean, I started smoking before I was 21 and before I drank. I was totally straight edge. I didn't drink till I was 21. Um, and but like everyone talked about scotch, your cigar and scotch, cigars and scotch. To this day, like that's like Rocky Patel's tagline. And I'm not knocking Rocky.
No, no, no.
He just
Yeah.
talks about, oh, there's nothing better in the world, or wouldn't it be better if we could all get together and drink a single malt and smoke a cigar? It's
It's a timeless
it's
pairing.
exactly it's an
It's a
and it
timeless
just was
pairing.
before I could even drink. It was already tired in my mind. So like
Yeah,
I just was
exactly.
like, and so when I actually tried it, because Scotch is a very, now I certainly have acquired a taste for it. I do
Mm-hmm.
appreciate great Scotch. I do appreciate blended Scotch.
Yeah.
But so when I first turned 21 and actually drank it and smoked together, it's just like, what the hell is no? This is tough. It's so like that's why it'll always be kind of
And I
overrated
think
to
it's
me.
also so overwhelming because there's so many different ones out there,
Right.
right?
There's your
And
peaty
and, and
Scotches, your Highlands,
yes,
your Lowlands, your
exactly.
blended, your single malt, everything. Like
Exactly. It's just so overwhelming that it's like, do I really know scotches or do I not?
do I
Because
just
it's
think I
just
do? Yeah.
exactly. You know what I mean? And I've had my fair of scotches and stuff, but every time I see one that is new, and then I hear the tasting notes on it and everything, it's like, oh wow, okay, so I haven't had that one, and this must be something completely different. But yeah, okay, I could agree with that with you. I don't have one in particular, like it's just part of my job, right? To have that the scotch and the bourbon and all that stuff. But yeah, I think it could be a little overrated. I probably would go with the bourbon, being a better pairing. But that's just in our lines, right? And
Yeah.
maybe because it's just that's just ingrained just my mind, that is just that's what Camacho is about. For example, you know what I mean? We've matched it with Camacho
Right.
for
Yeah.
so
The
many years.
bourbon, the barrel aged series, which we'll talk about here in a
Yeah,
little bit. And
yeah.
you all the work you've done with Tom, that
Hmm.
just it kind of just makes sense. Or
It
it's gonna
makes
be
sense. Yeah.
interesting. Like let mark the day, 10 years from now. What will bourbon still be king? I think. Will
I mean,
it'll be interesting.
you may have a spike of tequila, right? I see it. I'm not guaranteeing everything, but I can probably assure you that you will not see a spike of vodka. That's the other one.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I hate pairing vodka with cigars.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I don't think it
Yeah.
goes
I don't
well.
think you'll
No
see a
matter
like a
which vodka
spike of
or
vodka.
however,
Yeah.
maybe if it's a cocktail, right? That you disguise the flavor a little bit, but the vodka, No, that's I think I probably removed the gin and put the vodka in my worst pairings, right? Bourbon, I think, speaking of like I was saying, timeless. I think it's part of what you expect, right? It's just the easiest pairing unless there's something that comes up or like a crazy fusion of spirits. But I think bourbon will still reign when it comes to pairing with cigars and scotch. Believe me, it'll probably be there.
Yeah,
50 years from now,
Scotch and cigar.
Sebastian will be smoking cigars, right? With scotch,
Yeah, of course.
most likely. Yeah,
Here's to that.
yeah, man.
So, well, George, I appreciate you kind of having some fun with this to kick our night off, and that brings us into tonight's major point, which is always brought to you by Wood Butcher, Maine. Introducing durable and attractive wooden creations to your kitchen, backyard grill, and home using native Maine wood and other exotic wood species. Wood Butcher Maine products include butcher blocks, cutting boards, coasters, grill grate cleaners, and an ELOSOFUMAR favorite, the red oak cigar ashtray and cocktail coaster, plus many more. The Wood Butcher Main's team has passion for food, the Pine Tree State, and craftsmanship of the highest quality, shown in absolutely every piece. Visit woodbutchermaine.com. Yes, that's woodbutchermaine.com to learn more and explore the current collection. And I forgot it. Damn it. I have a beautiful Wood Butcher Maine, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous cutting board with the
Oh,
amazing Camacho symbol emblazoned on it. It's in my kitchen. I've used
yes,
it. It is awesome, including the meat cleaver that you guys
that was
got to
pretty
me.
cool, man.
Awesome,
Yes,
awesome.
I've been meaning to use it, but we made so like a small quantity of them that I'm like, should I use it? Should I not use it? Because I'm always thinking, all right, I may use this for a photo shoot or something. So I want to keep that one that I was able to keep for myself, in pristine conditions. But they look badass, man.
Oh, they are on.
And the butcher blocks and everything. It's very very cool. That was part of a our influencer kit that just everybody was like, oh my god, where can I buy that? It was very cool.
Speaking of sons, I have a 5-year-old who loves to help me open packages, and he helped me
Uh
open
huh.
that package, and he's like, "Oh, Daddy, what's this?" And he flipped open the meat cleaver. I was like, "Oh God!"
Oh yeah. Oh man, no, but that was a pretty
He
cool
thought it was
project,
really
man.
cool though. He was like,
No,
"Oh,
it is.
wow."
Yes, like wow. But no, that was pretty cool, man. I
Awesome.
gotta use mine. I gotta take the pictures that I gotta take and then use it because I love to barbecue. I do it pretty often, at least a couple times a week, and I'm always sharpening my knives that I have in the kitchen. But I'm like, I know I have this one that is perfect to cut this skirt steak or whatever, and I always keep it in this little box that I came in. But I'm gonna have to give it a good use, man. Those are pretty cool.
So tonight we're talking about the newly released Camacho Nicaragua. So this is the latest regular production line to go
Yes.
along with the famed triple Maduro, of course, the iconic Corojo,
Hmm.
Criollo, Connecticut, Ecuador, which was the newest one, but now here is the new kid on the block, the Camacho Nicaragua. So that's what we're smoking right now. And so we
Yeah,
said we promised we're gonna, yeah, go for it, please.
and that one is part of the core line, right?
Hmm.
Of our so we have the the structure of the brand. So we have our bold everyday smokes or core, which is the Camacho, Criollo. You have the Connecticut. You have the Ecuador, Nicaragua, and then Corojo. In terms of strength and intensity, that's how it goes. And then you have our master build series, right, which includes the American barrel aged, Nicaraguan barrel aged, the triple Maduro, right? The triple Maduro fits into that master build series.
Okay.
And then we have our limited editions and stuff. But yeah, so we needed to fill that gap with of that flavor profile, right? And this one, it was probably a good 2.5 years in the making,
Hmm.
right? Um, in terms of the blend and everything, fine tuning the blend. Actually, we were tasting this blend or one of the contestants of the blends last year, the year before, it was 2 years ago in Vegas at the show. All right, so that's when everybody got together and we were able to sample it. And at that point, nobody knew what it was. We were just kind of like, okay, this would this fit the Camacho profile, blah blah blah. So it was already in the making,
Hmm.
right? And to fit that core flavor profile that we were missing, right? Uh, and our efforts are more into kind of promoting, building, setting the foundation for our core line, which I think it's very important. Uh, Limited editions are not sustainable, right? It's just something,
Yeah.
especially with everything that goes on, or now things have eased up a little bit with the FDA, but at the moment, 2.5 years ago, it's like, okay, we can't just live on limited editions. We need to amplify our core line, which is just the structure. Those are the pylons of our brand, and that's where the Nicaragua kind of fit in. Usually, as we have discussed before, we use the name for the line to be the wrapper of the cigar.
Right,
But in
right.
this
That
one,
was what I was gonna ask.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so this one in particular, we tried to feature the Esteli tobacco that it has in the filler, right? Which is about 60% of the filler is Nicaraguan tobacco. So that I don't have full control of that. That is just goes up the ladder, all the way to Switzerland. So that's what they wanted to feature on this one in particular,
So what is
right?
the blend breakdown here, George? So what's the wrapper binder, and then you said Nicaragua's in the filler. So what is
Yeah,
the
so
blend
you have a combination of Ecuadorian Habano, right? Which we couldn't have been able to use that because we already have the Ecuador, right? So this one has a very similar wrapper to the Ecuador. Um, then you have a Honduran binder, right? And then also you have a combination of Nicaraguan, Honduran, and Dominican tobacco in the filler, but mostly the what you pick up from the filler, right? It's this Nicaraguan flavor profile, which is what's featured, and that's what we called it the Camacho Nicaragua.
You
It's very
especially
dominant.
get that on the retro hill. You get that
Hmm.
Nicaraguan, that
Hmm.
that Nicaraguan spice is really right on the retro.
Yeah, and it's not a Nicaraguan puro, right? Because obviously we are very dynamic when it comes to our blends. Uh, all of our cigars, aside just from literally just in terms of regular production, just the Corojo that is 100% Honduran puro, right?
Hmm.
All of our other cigars have different types of tobacco in them.
Yeah.
The Criollo, the Connecticut, the Ecuador, all of them basically. The Corojo is the only one that is 100% Honduran Corojo, and that way, in that flavor profile, it's like very one-dimensional, right? Even though the Ecuador is very versatile when it comes to blending, and you can tweak it just by modifying the different grades of tobacco that you use on the wrapper, just different ways, but it's just all the same tobacco, right? And with this one, we had to tweak it a couple different times, and that's why I'm able to tell you that it's about 60% of the filler has this Nicaraguan tobacco, right? And
Okay.
that was the what we needed in terms of flavor profile, right? We were not going to make it 100% Nicaraguan tobacco in the filler just because that wouldn't fit that flavor profile that we were trying to fill, at least in our core.
So this isn't a knock, but something I've really noticed about this cigar, and you can tell that you can, to me, it's obvious and apparent that Honduran tobacco still plays a part in it too, because to me, I've always noticed that Honduran tobacco has kind of a low combustibility rate. It smokes slower. And again, that's not a knock. That's just what I've noticed about it. And
Yeah,
and this is, I mean, I lit up the Robusto. You started smoking before I did, and
yeah,
we're down to about the same spot, but I mean, I'm smoking a Robusto. Normally, we're an hour, we're an hour in. I'd be pretty close to finish, but I mean, I'm barely, at the halfway point, and I'm smoking at a regular pace. So it really kind of slows down the smoking time to where you can actually, I mean, you can really savor this cigar.
you can. Quality construction is it's one of our main goals, right? Um, and just the way that the cigar, it's you have pretty much the perfect balance of tobacco in there. It's not underfilled, it's not overfilled.
Of course.
um the construction of it. I mean, just a second ago, I dropped
Oh
my
yeah,
ash
you had
on.
an amazing, you had amazing ash. I saw it.
It's all over my shorts now, but it was very nice. You know, the construction of these, it's something to brag about, at least that I can say when it comes to the construction of our cigars, because our factory in Honduras is just state of the art when it comes to the building, but just how the operation is run, right? I don't know if you can describe an operation as a state of the art operation. It's and that's what it is down there, right? The quality control that it goes through our cigars is just, you know, it's something that I visited a fair amount of factories around the you know, in the industry in different countries and stuff, and then just our quality control is just, it's outstanding, right? And that shows in our cigars. And yes, I mean, I'm a fast smoker, right? But on this one, you can savor it and it burns slow. The wrapper, it's you can tell that we've taken the time, right? And then it's perfect. It's perfect to you know, when the tobacco was used, the wrapper was used, it was perfectly balanced, right? So where it's it was not gonna burn uneven, or you, so this cigar in particular has, it's very balanced when it comes to the burning face of it. But yeah, I do share the you know, your thought that it burns very slow.
Much
I
like the
don't
Corojo,
know.
which is
Yes,
appropriate with what we're talking about.
exactly. Yeah.
So
The Camacho Connecticut burns a little bit quicker
it
to
does.
me,
Yes, I was
a
just
little
going to
bit
say that.
quicker. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the fastest burning if we're going to go by burning speeds, and it's that you know, very thin, high combustible rate of Connecticut
Yeah.
and everything. So, but what I was going to say is, you know, we were talking about we talking about how you were sampling this out a couple years ago
Hmm.
before even when anyone knew what it was at the trade show and everything. You know, y'all, and we're not going to get into the highs and the whys and the whats and stuff, but you all were not going to participate in this year's trade show had there been one. That was decided pretty early on, and of course there isn't one. There's nothing
Yeah.
because thanks COVID,
Yeah.
there's nothing
Exactly.
going on. So, but was
I will
this?
miss Vegas though.
Yeah. We all do. What?
Yeah.
So was this? But was this planned for? Was this always in the plans for 2020? Did you guys bump it up? Was it actually delayed? You know, was this an on-time schedule release for you guys?
What was it, July 1st? It was Liberty. Yes. You know what? We at the beginning, well, we showcased this cigar February 13th of this year. Right. I don't know if you recall, but we made all of our releases available, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah,
to
I
the
remember
public.
you. Yeah, I remember
Right.
it being announced. Yes.
Exactly. Eh, yes, it was planned. You know, like I said, the blend and everything, the packaging and everything was on you know, in the making. You know, for a couple of years. So this was planned. So we basically, our timelines are, we look at least, you know, in concrete numbers, we look 2-3 years ahead, right?
hmm
So yeah, this was definitely planned. Now with COVID, we had, you know, raised a lot of questions, you know, internally as to like, okay, what's going on? We've never had the situation before to where the factory is not producing the cigars. You know what I mean? That was just unprecedented, but it didn't affect much, you know, at the time when, you know, like I said, we were February 13th, we announced that everything was ready to go. We just may have had maybe a month delay when it came to logistics, getting the cigars out of Honduras. But everything was ready. Everything was in the aging rooms. Um, Everything was packaged and stuff like that. So no, it didn't mess up our timeline when it came to release. It was supposed to come out in June. It came out in July. You know, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, just the release of it when it comes to, you know, the marketing behind it, that is what had to change a little bit. Obviously,
Gotcha.
we were not able to go into stores and promote it and throw events and parties and stuff like that like we usually do. We had to, you know, resort just to go through social media, right? That was just the only option at the moment, and still is until this time. There's events happening and stuff like that,
And that's been a
slowly
major
but
strength
surely.
for you guys. The way that
Eh,
Camacho and you have really, I mean, we're going to talk about Live Loud in a few moments here, but
yeah.
I mean, you guys go all out when it
Yes,
comes to launches.
exactly. And that's how this changed a little bit, right? But I think for the most part, it's been a successful launch. Different, right? The metrics are a little bit different. We're counting views, not attendees now. When it comes to an event and stuff like that. But I think the public has just gotten this Camacho Nicaragua and really enjoyed it. I see because I handle social media for Camacho and Avo as well, and I see it day to day. Just the love that this one has gotten in general. But
Mhm.
it just to your point, no, it didn't affect much. Our factory was probably closed, overall for about a month before we started implementing guidelines and we were back in business. So no, it didn't affect the release of it. Everything was somewhat as planned.
Terrific. So
Hmm.
we got to talk about this packaging a little bit here, George. So okay, so I'll ask the hard question here. So we talked about the iconic Corojo, the red, the original, everybody knows it and everything. And you guys decide on the burnt orange, which depending on lighting, because you've got some
Yes,
lighting back there, which showcases it a lot better than mine. But depending on the lighting, it can look a little bit reddish. So I mean, were you
it
guys
is.
worried
It
about the
is.
confusion at all, or?
No, because I guess nobody really knew how it would kind of
See, that
uh,
lighting's good. Now you can see the orange. There you
yeah,
go.
that's good. That's the burnt orange. But sometimes depending on the exposure that you get, like to shoot this cigar in particular is extremely hard. And as you can see, I do my photo shoots in the background,
Yeah,
and
you
then we
got
just we
all
just
sorts of lighting back
we
there.
just we just had our Camacho Grill and Chill contest that went on for 3 weeks, and I had to shoot the cigars just to promote the prizes and all that stuff. And it's a nightmare obviously if you're just shooting the cigar, sure, but if you have other elements around it, the if you modify if you kind of edit the picture a little bit, it'll just change the tone. I'm like, no, that looks red, it's burnt orange. And if you change it a certain way, it's like, no, that looks too much like the Connecticut. So it was just a bit of a nightmare to do But I think once you see the box in person, you understand that it's not red, and it's not like the orange from the Connecticut. But yeah, Camacho, us and our colors, right? We did get a lot of heat at the beginning when we relaunched, just because of the color scheme that we had, right? Back in
Mhm.
2013, when we brought Camacho back and relaunched and revamped it and changed just pretty much the game when it came to packaging and just presentation, right? Um, all that it was just not us, in the office and being like, all right, let's just come up with something cool and colorful. No. This was very thought out, and it was
Mhm.
just targeted towards the consumer, right? And easy understanding of the line, and just if you walked into a sea of brown, right, which are your traditional humidor, these boxes would stick out, right?
Oh,
And
well,
that's
they
what
they
that and
have
that's
become
what
iconic. Yeah, like the
that's
the
what
the
we
big
wanted. We wanted the
labels.
we wanted
Yeah.
the boxes to stick out,
Hmm.
being the cigars themselves, or if you had the full presentation, which is the box, right?
Right.
They stick out wherever you go. If there's at least 2-3 boxes of Camacho, you will recognize them, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
then the color, obviously every one of them had its own representation. Obviously, we at this point we're kind of running out of colors, but it's very vivid, right? It's
Hmm.
very to the point, very upfront, unapologetic, right? Um, that was just the idea of since day one, right? And I was the last addition to this, to the last piece to the puzzle back in 2013. And when I saw what we were going to do, because I used to be a retailer before,
Right.
right before I started with Davidoff, I had my own store in Miami, and I had Camacho, right? Carlos Escalona, our rep in Miami. I've known him for 16 years that I've been in the industry. He would sell me Camacho, right? And I was when I got the call from Davidoff to come up and interview. I was like, oh well, yeah, it's for Camacho, cool. I did not have any idea of what they were wanted to do with the
What it was going to
brand.
become. Yeah.
Exactly, and at the end of my interview, I they walked me into the conference room and I saw these boxes. I'm like, wow, this is just, it's outstanding.
Oh,
This is a
yeah.
game changer. And then since then that's been the idea, a disruptor of the status quo, basically.
Well, and it's
Um,
become kind of the big label. You guys brought that you guys made that cool. And it like a lot of other companies started making bigger labels, bolder
now you
labels
see
and
now
stuff.
you see now you see a lot of companies using big labels, bright boxes. I think we broke the norm and made it okay to give it a
Hmm.
try, right? And I think a lot of people have taken that avenue and exploited
But
it, right?
but they
I now
still
and
stand out, George. That's the thing. They still like made it cool again, and yeah, it became this thing. But at the same time, you walk into any humidor, and I know we got some retailers in the chat. I know Jay has these at Blue Smoke in Dallas, and we have them at Michael's Tobacco. I mean, they everyone knows where Camacho is, and everyone knows what it's become.
it's
And
cool, it's clean, it's modern, it's elegant, but still bold. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's got its, and this is, I mean, we haven't changed our packaging in going on 8 years now,
Yeah,
man, almost 8 years. So it's something that, yeah, the agency that we work with, we're still working with them until this day. Um, they had a big part in just the research behind the colors and how the consumers would react to the bigger labels and just the change on the logo, because people were like, oh my god, that looks like the Everlast logo. It's not, but sure. All right. But yeah, we already, had it connected to an established brand, and tweaked it a little bit. So I think the revamp on this one, and it's probably one of the biggest ones that the industry has ever seen, right?
yeah,
Um, and in terms of the boxes, 13, 14 coats of lacquer on the boxes, piano finish,
yes,
the hinges and everything, just the perfect weight
of
of
the
the
lid and
lid of the
everything.
lid and everything.
I mean, you guys, yeah, pulled out all the
20
stops. Hmm.
20 count boxes instead of 25 or 23 or 21 before that Camacho used to have. It was all over the place, right? So and we cut a lot of SKUs when we did the revamp as well.
Yeah,
So that
my
that helped out.
my mother absolutely abhors the fact that I smoke cigars, and she's not really into the fact that I smoke, but she loves me. She supports me, but yeah, cigars just not her thing. She loves boxes. She loves cigar boxes, and I told her tonight who I was going to be interviewing, and she immediately knew. She immediately knew the company. It's the only time she's ever been kind of excited about an episode, George, because she
Because
loves
of
your
the
boxes.
boxes.
She loves your
Because of the
boxes. She thinks they're
boxes.
they're her favorite. She thinks they're just
I've seen so many purses made out of them, guitars, lamps. And there's another guy that actually that was pretty cool too. He made a like a coffee table, and the base was a combination of Camacho boxes,
Oh, there you
and
go.
and then just a big thick glass on top. That was very, very cool. But yeah, the boxes. I mean, they're not cheap. They're well made. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's a good quality. It's perfect for a gift, right? Um, it pretty much it opens the door, to anyone, and then the cigar will take care of the rest, right? The cigar will
Right.
sit you down and serve you coffee, but the boxes, the presentation, impactful packaging, it's what stands out, right? And it helps us break that barrier, that monotony that some humidors have with just a sea of brown, right? That
Right.
you really need to hear about the cigar or get a good recommendation, and it makes it a little harder. And also, if somebody's gonna go into a humidor, they're like, I'm looking for this because Camacho, they always think it's Hector Camacho's cigar. No, it's not, right? And then some of the names like Criollo, people are like Criollo, Corojo, Ecuadorian. The Connecticut is the only one that they actually get right. And it's but they remember the colors, right? So if they smoke a Camacho, they're like, oh, that red one. We know it's the Corojo. It's like if it's the yellow one, oh, we know it's the Criollo. So it makes it easier for the retailer also to and the consumer to
Right.
understand the brand in the brand structure.
Now I hate to be that guy, George, because I'm always I abhor the what's new question and everything like that, but I hate to be
Mhm.
that guy. But I'm such a big fan of the Ecuador BXP, the Connecticut BXP. Um, are is that? Do you think the Camacho Nicaragua follow suit at some point?
This blend in particular,
Yeah,
um, possibly. There's no reason as to why not. It would comply with everything that
yeah,
all the
because I
requirements.
love those other blends in the B. I mean, I love those other blends in general, but I love those blends in the BXP, and I think I mean, I think it would just add something special to this for sure.
Yeah, it could. It could. I don't think that we have anything planned right away for something like that. But yeah, it could be a contestant definitely. It would fit right in. I personally love box press cigars. Right, the Connecticut BXB is just it's one of my favorite ones.
Oh, it's awesome. It's
It's
outstanding.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it could be. It could be. I think it'll fit right in.
Yeah, the Ecuador is probably out of the core lines. The Ecuador is probably my favorite overall. Like we're because as my audience knows, I'm a huge Vitola snob. The
Hmm.
Ecuador is like the line that I'm like every line I'm all about. But the BXP is at my absolute favorite in the Ecuador, and the BXP in the Connecticut's at my absolute favorite in that one as well.
Yeah, I love the Ecuador in the Churchill size. I love that Churchill. Now we don't have a box press Churchill, right?
Hmm.
That would be cool.
There you go.
But yeah, but the Churchill size on the Ecuador, it's probably one of my favorite. I remember back in 2015 when we launched it, 2015 or 16, whenever we launched the Ecuador. I would just get boxes of Churchill, right? I was actually on 2015 it was. I remember when I first got my first box of Ecuador that came from the factory that we were just releasing it. I was in Utah, if I'm not wrong. Um, and I smoked it and just that I had tried the blend before, the Robusto, blah blah blah. Once I got my full box of Ecuador in the Churchill size, I opened it up and I was actually somewhere, I think it was near Park City or wherever it was that I was up high in the mountain. It was summer, but there was snow, right?
Yeah.
So I had this little moment that I opened up my box, lit up my Camacho Ecuador Churchill, and I was just in this the side of this gas station, and it was snow and stuff like that. And I just had that moment that I'm like, I mean, if I have been, I don't know, probably in another scenario, I would have been like, oh no, this is good. Or it may have not made an impact, but that one, that moment that I had with that Ecuador Churchill, it made it my favorite size, right? And when I was doing my drives, they were long drives, so I needed the biggest cigar I
Right.
could get, and then the Churchill format is just perfect for me.
We're
I really really enjoy it.
we're going to talk about box press in just a second on something else here, but
Mm-hmm.
before we kind of close the book on the Nicaragua that I'm wrapping up this Robusto now, is so I'm interested to get your take on this because so when I first smoked this and I'm smoking it again tonight and everything, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of the Corojo, the iconic Corojo, the original.
Mm-hmm.
Now you mentioned tonight, and you've mentioned in other interviews that you guys felt that this really filled a gap. And when I smoked this cigar, and I even and I kind of and I smoked the Corojo too, I feel that they're kind of on the taste is different. That goes without saying. Um, but I feel like they're on the same kind of wavelength, if that makes sense, in terms of body and
Yes.
strength.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was the philosophy and the theory behind filling the gap? What gap was being just the use of tobacco? Was that the use of was that the
The
gap you were
use
filling?
of tobacco and the flavor profile, right?
Okay,
Um, the Corojo has a very unique flavor profile, very leathery. It just like it's very Cubanesque, right? Because Corojo and then the original Corojo, which is what we use, is what Cuba used in its heyday,
hmm
right? Mostly
true
wrapper.
Cubanesque, not Cubanesque today. Let's.
Exactly. No, the true Cubanesque. Yeah, exactly. And that's that we didn't want to touch that, right? We wanted to keep that because the Camacho Corojo is just the DNA of the brand, right? Um, Other than that, all of our cigars have a little bit of Corojo in them, right? That being in the wrapper, obviously the Corojo, but then the binder and the filler, they all have Corojo, original Corojo in them to give it that little bit of flavor profile. But in this one, we just needed to have that bold flavor profile that we couldn't modify it anymore on the Corojo, right? Um, the Ecuador is already out. It's a very established flavor profile. You know, you have your citrusy, you have some Brazilian tobacco in there as well. We just needed to fill that gap internally, right? So we have a set of panelists in Switzerland that pretty much gauge all of our cigars, all of the cigars, including from for the entire company, anything that comes out for Avo, Davidoff, Camacho, and all that stuff goes through this panel, and then that's what they were requesting at the moment, right? And this is 2.5, almost 3 years ago, to fill that gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of flavor profile. And then you're right, it's very similar in terms of the strength and some of the body, some of the characteristics are shared between the Corojo and the Nicaragua. But I think this one it offers you a couple other things because of the dynamics that it has of using different types of tobacco in them. That's pretty much what we were looking for.
You guys are so clever, as we've talked about, and so deliberate in your marketing, right? We've already talked about that at length. Was there any concern with the color, the wavelength, as I suggested, that this could take away from Corojo sales, or Corojo is so established that there's no way it could?
It's very well established. It's like I said, it's probably the main pillar, right? It's the
Of course.
spine of the brand. That yeah, I mean, if something if were to happen, the first one to go to, if we have to choose obviously between Corojo and Nicaragua, if one had to go, it would probably be Nicaragua, right? Because the Corojo is it's the brand, it's the definition of the brand.
Kind of teeing up a later segment here, you are, George. But
Yeah.
I am actually I finished up my Camacho Nicaragua, and I'm gonna be lighting up my second cigar for the evening, and I'm so excited to light this up with you.
Let's do it.
And because this is the first year that I will actually have smoked 2 of this limited series. This will be the second one, and I'm really excited about it to smoke it with you. And that is the Camacho Liberty Series 2020. Always coming and always presented in these gorgeous coffins. They come out on the annual basis. Really, really fantastic limited series that you all do. And so it was interesting. I was part of a discussion with Coop a number of months back, and we were talking about limited series, like what cigars have had the most successful limited series runs. And the subject of that night happened to be the Monster series by Tatuaje that Pete Johnson does. And George, I'll follow my sword here. I'll completely confess here that I was remiss because we didn't at the time, in the moment, we didn't mention the Liberty. But when you think about it, alongside the Monster series of Tatuaje, Liberty series has stood the test of time in terms of that long time annual
18
tradition.
years.
18 years.
18 years.
Yeah. Unbelievable run. So, and I know that you've gotten asked this question before, and I know that that your colleague there at Davidoff, Dylan Austin, is a huge fan of this series as well. And he has, if I'm not mistaken, he has the entire collection, right? Or he's close.
We're close. We're missing, and we always try to keep number 1. This year in particular, there was a bit of a hiccup because they, for some reason, we shipped the allotment to. And this is something that I already corrected with the factory, and I told them what we usually do. They didn't know. If not, they would have done it. But they sent the first run, right? The first that were made, and it was only a week apart. But the first ones, like that number 1, went to Europe, right? So at that point, when we got our allotments, we were looking for the boxes that that started with the first runs, in terms of the numbers, the first one, and we're like, oh my god, what the hell? We started at I think 1100 is the box that came in that started. We're like, what the hell happened here? So obviously we are missing this 1 year. And I think there's a couple more years that we're missing on to having the number 1, the box number 1. But yeah, I think we have probably a good 13, 14 liberties that we have saved up in the office, just because it means a lot to us, man. And to Dylan and myself. This is Camacho is our baby, right? When I joined Camacho, Dylan was the brand manager, and then quickly he became the head of marketing for Camacho at the moment. Now, obviously, now he's the president of the company, so he's moved up in the quite fast in the past 8 years. But yeah, so that's it was always the thing to open up the boxes that came from the container and then look for that number one to keep it right. So and this is the 18th installment, right? This is and it's the first box press.
There we go. That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Right? So
Box
first
press. Yeah.
first box press, first 6x60, right? The box itself, I'm looking at this camera here. Well, you kind of see over there. It's very, I have it in the background. The box itself, it's the first one that we have a full, lacquer presentation, right?
Mhm.
All the other ones we try to keep them very rugged, very Honduras.
The rustic wood. I was going to say
exactly. Yeah, on this one in particular, we went all out, right? Just because since we're gonna change the format, the actual, size of the cigar, because usually they're 11/18s, right? We've done Robustos before. For the most part, most of the Liberties are 11/18s. We wanted to, do something outstanding with the packaging, and I think we achieved it with that box with the Screaming Eagle in the front. But the Liberty and then just the combination, right, of this one, it's got some so the Ecuadorian Habana wrapper on this one. It's got some Corojo in the binder, and the filler is a combination between Honduran and Dominican tobaccos. And I think that's a little different as well. Usually the Liberties are mostly Corojo. It's the best Corojo from the season that we can put together. And surprisingly enough, the 18, so Camacho, the Liberty has been around for 18 years, right? And our master blender, which people don't usually, hear about her or anything, but it's a lady, it's a girl. Her name is Patricia, right? And then she is the one that has helped blend, and throughout the years, she ended up blending all of the Liberties. So she's been part of all the 18 releases of the Liberty. She's been with Camacho for about 27 years. So she's been with Camacho. She started as a roller, and then now she's the master blender.
And she's not an old person either. She's started when she was a kid.
She started when she was 15.
Yeah.
15, 16. Yeah. Hey, yeah, Patty's in her early 40s, and then she's been part of this, and also the diplomas are the other ones that are her babies, right?
Right.
But the Liberty in particular, every time I go down there and talk to her and I ask her about the blends, and she has anything good that she's made for herself and stuff like that, but she always comes out with the Liberties, right? And I think this one, it's just we knocked it out of the park, and with this one in particular, man. I truly enjoyed. We were discussing earlier how I like box press. I'm not usually a fan of 660s, but this one makes it a little bit more inviting.
The box press, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mentioned earlier in the show how I'm a member of the Lancero, the self-proclaimed Lancero Legion. I'm usually a smaller gauge guy. Robustos and Coronas are usually my jam and everything, and I'm just not a 60 guy. Unlike Coop, who absolutely adores them.
The 60s, huh?
Yes, he's a big 60 guy, and so he was really excited about this year's variation of the Liberty series, but this is 2 weeks in a row now that I'm smoking a 60 gauge cigar. So my Lancero Legion card is kind of slowly being taken away from me. But what I really was really caught me off guard about this cigar, when I toasted the foot, you get this aroma off the smoke with this wonderful blend. It's so, it is about as nutty as you can, it is like, there are so many nuances in tobacco flavors where like people pick up this and they pick up that, and people have weird flavors that they pick up. Yeah. But it is like just that pronounced. Like, you cannot toast the foot and not get that nuttiness. It is
nutty, very woody as well.
Yes.
It's and it's not pungent. It's not overwhelming, right? It's very subtle.
Very complimentary. Yeah, for sure.
Very elegant. If a scent could be, described as that. I agree with you. And the burn on this one. I mean, this is it. It's the construction on this one in particular. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting some really nice sweetness from this beautiful, like, kind of like a stone fruit sweetness, like apricot, that woodiness, that, of course, that spice, from that, that Honduran tobacco that we were talking about. Um, this is burning a lot quicker though than the Nicaragua, I will say, but not again, but not at like not aggressive like the Connecticut that we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about.
Yes.
Um, and but it's and then the 60 box press is just it's not a traditional 60. It's not overwhelmingly.
Exactly. It makes it manageable. Even the label, everything about this one, it's pretty nice. Not obviously because I represent the brand, but I think that if I were to go see this in a in a humidor store, right, I would I would swallow the price point. That's the only problem that Liberty has had in the past, right? Um, and unfortunately, it's
Well, it's
because
a collector's piece. I mean, that's what we were talking
it's
about.
a
Yeah,
hundred percent. If somebody understands it that way, it is, right. But obviously Camacho is not an expensive brand,
right.
right? But so when you walk into a store in the humidor and you pick up a Liberty and you're like, well, it's $20. Why? Well, unfortunately, the retailer does not know that. They just buy the product from us and sell it. Some people understand it, but if you were to go and see the work that goes behind this cigar, the tobaccos that are used in there, how rare the tobacco that we use in this cigar is, just because it's not, we have limited runs of this particular tobacco, of this recipe per se, right? These ingredients that we put together for this blend in particular, the aging period, how some of these tobaccos are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old in there. That time costs money, right? That is tobacco that was purchased, and it just doesn't go down in price, and also the packaging that goes behind it. It
Yeah.
is a collector's piece every year, and I think this year most in particular, it's definitely a collector's piece, right? It's a perfect gift. I We try to make it, and that's the other thing, that this one, it was right on time for 4th of July, right?
Hmm.
We usually try to Liberty. It just represents America, right? The celebration of independence and all that. And I think that this box in particular, it's just a statement of that. Um, but yeah, there is always this friction with the price of the Liberty, right? As to why it's so expensive. Well, there's a lot of components, into why the price it's a little bit more. It costs us more. There's in terms of the tobacco, in terms of the packaging, everything, even shipping the box costs more. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
there's a lot of components in them. But I think that once you get to smoke the cigar, it's an outstanding cigar. You know.
Well, I mean, to that point though, George, like what I'll say in y'all's defense of the price point, I think, like if you're a Camacho smoker, if to the gentleman or the lady who is that loyal Camacho person, we all, the smoker today is so much different than the smoker than when you and I first started in the industry, and even then is so much more different than the smoker from 20 years before we got into the industry, where
Oh
you
yeah.
smoke you're brand loyal. But there are some brand loyal people, and there are people that are out there that are just Camacho people.
Yes.
And if you've got the Camacho smoker, that loyal Camacho smoker who's comfortable in that reasonable price range, as we just said, this is something they can look forward to and collect. This is
Hundred
something, yeah.
percent.
So
And it's a limited edition cigar.
exactly
You know what I mean? You can spend, the price for if your brand releases a cigar, a yearly cigar that is unique in terms of flavor, packaging, and everything, it is worth that extra bit of money,
hmm
right? If you're a true loyal fan. Now, if you're just started, first of all, if this is not your beginner cigar, if you're just starting cigars, I don't think this would be, an appropriate cigar. But most likely,
yeah,
we would recommend you to go with the Connecticut and go from there,
right.
right? Because the Connecticut, like
Connecticut, the Criollo, yeah, those are some good
exactly,
starters. Yeah,
yeah. Because the Connecticut, just to touch base on that, and it's funny that we discussed that earlier, and then my line that I usually use for the
right.
Connecticut with the
That's the next story I
balls.
was gonna say. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that is an introductory cigar to Camacho, right? Even though it's a nice creamy wrapper, but what's under the hood, it's got a lot of power, right?
Right.
But I think that's a perfect introductory cigar to Camacho. This is more for the developed palate, and especially if you're a Camacho smoker. With this one, I think you'll once your palate gets a hold of this. I think it's an experience that puts the $20 that it costs aside, right? And it's a limited run as well. So
Exactly. So just to bring everyone in to our little aside there. So George has traveled the world extensively for Camacho in the last 8 years. Building up this new revamped brand that's been in existence for a very long time. You guys relaunched the brand under the amazing packaging we were already talking about. You've shaken thousands upon thousands of hands,
yeah,
thousands of cigars, cases of bullet, as we were
yeah.
talking about, and but you and I actually had the pleasure of meeting one time. Of course, you don't remember. Again, thousands of hands. It's okay. Like, and I gave you the pass. You're like, oh, I'm sorry,
But
man. I
now I
met a lot of people,
remember.
and I was
I,
like, but you do remember our conversation, which we were in the humidor and we were talking about, and you asked me, you're like, hey, what cigars, what Camacho have you smoked the new Camachos? And I said, yes, I have. And I said, yeah, I dig them. I said, but I really kind of, what caught my attention was the Connecticut. And I said that this is a Connecticut with balls.
yes.
And then I even went further as to say is like, yeah, this is like breakfast. This is like your eggs with hot sauce. And it was funny because that was the line at the time. In the moment, you're like, oh man, that's awesome. I'm totally going to steal that.
Yeah.
And then now you don't remember that, but you remember the Camacho, the
the,
Connecticut with
the
balls
the
line.
Connecticut with balls, man, and I use it, because it's just so. It's very clear, right? The message is very clear. Like I said before, I make sure that wherever I use it, I am
The
able to
audience is
use it. Yeah,
appropriate,
the
of course.
audience is
Yes.
appropriate.
Yeah, of course.
But once I say it, people are like, "Wow, that is so true," and it's
Spot
amazing. Well,
on.
they get it spot on, man. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Oh,
I'm
you're
gonna give
welcome.
you credit from now on.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. No, it was just a story that I remembered. I remembered that our conversation about it, and so I was really excited to reconnect with you on this interview. To
Yes,
kind of
man.
to talk about it. So it's funny, but the Liberty series has really become this iconic run for you guys of 18
Yes,
years of truly giving something special to your loyal fan base and to people outside of it, that want
of
that
course.
nice collector's piece and everything. And every year is different. Everyone's all, I'm sure you've gotten that something like, oh, I liked last year's better, or like 2 years ago was the best.
And
And
that's the point of it. You know what I mean? That creates this the conversation piece, because it's every blend is different, and that's the idea of it. Get them while they're hot.
right.
Because you won't get it next year.
And we talking about the price point. So I've always made a point to buy one, right? So this is full circle on this point, right? I've always made a point to buy one. And I smoke it. I don't keep them as part of a collection, but I smoke them, and I always buy one, and I smoke it, and and I've had my opinions over the years, but it got to, you were talking about people with a collection, and I used to work with a gentleman at Michael's. He's no longer there, but this was the cigar he looked forward to. The Liberty was what he looked forward to. And I remember, and please don't take this the wrong way, George. I remember
Uh,
there's this one year that he really didn't like the blend. Like he really didn't like it. And he was, because it's something he looked forward to every year. He was so disappointed. And the following year, he didn't buy one. And I knew he was going to regret it. And so that was the only, this year and that year, 2014, were the only years that
that he didn't get it.
I've bought two,
Oh, they. Okay.
because I knew he was going to regret it, and I held on to it for him. And so 2015 came around. He got it again. He both liked. He's like, yeah. And I was waiting. I was
Yeah,
waiting
you
patiently for it.
waited a year.
He's like, I was waiting for him. He's like, you know what? I really regret not getting a 14. I was like, you really regret it? You really wish you had? He's like, yeah, damn it. I really should have gotten a
Wow.
14.
So really, so he
And,
held
and
out.
he
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 did
held out,
not buy it. Wow.
and I went into my locker and I pulled out the extra 14 that I bought, and I
Wow.
said, here you go, man. And he's like, "Are you kidding
Wow.
me?" And I said, "No, I knew we were going to have this conversation. I didn't know it was going to be this early. I didn't know it was going to be in 15. I didn't know if it was going to be in 16 or when. I didn't
Yeah,
know when it was going to happen, but I
but
knew
you
that we were
had
going to have
that.
this conversation." And so my gift to you, sir. And he was like, "Wow." And it was really touching for him. He was really taken aback by it. And it was a great moment for him to actually go back and smoke the one that he quote unquote
Nope.
boycotted.
Exactly.
And he's like, I don't know if this is what it smoked like a year ago. And I was like, I don't know either, because you're smoking it and I'm not. But and he's like, this is really. He's like, he's I I'm glad you did this, man, because man, this is really good. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah, it was a really great story from a really great Liberty lover, and since then, to my knowledge, he still hasn't missed a year.
So it's the 14. I have a box. I have 13. I have 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I don't have 17.
12 has
I don't
probably been
have
my
18.
all-time favorite. 12 was probably the one that was like, I mean, just knockout
Mm.
awesome.
We did a throwback on the 12,
Right.
probably 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, but you're talking about the original one,
The
the one
original 12.
I think it came in a red box,
Red
if
box,
I'm not
yes.
wrong. Yeah,
Yes.
outstanding, man, outstanding. It's just all, and I go and I see, when I go down to the factory, I see the bales, right, or where they're saving this tobacco for the Liberty, and it's just, it's crazy the amount of the little amount of tobacco that we save up for the Liberties, but it's just crazy the time that gets put onto, waiting for the right moment to use this tobacco for these blends. So every year it's a little bit different, in terms of flavor profile, and it's just every blend of these, it's a collector's piece, and
Absolutely.
it's that flavor profile that you won't get next year, because we're gonna, knock it out of the park again with a different blend. But it's just one of those that, yeah, I'm glad you were able to, to get reel that guy back in,
Oh, absolutely, man.
into the
I knew it would
Liberty.
happen. I just didn't know it would do that quick, but I knew it would happen.
Yeah,
I
that's
know
awesome.
we were talking about the awesome construction that you had on your Nicaragua moment ago, and I had a really nice ash going, and you said your ash is on your lap. Well,
Oh yeah.
mine just
Uh,
landed on my ankle, and that fucking hurt. But it's worth it though. So I'm enjoying this
Yeah, no,
thoroughly.
this one
Thoroughly.
is behaving really well too, and it's I thought I was have to touch it up, but no, it's even out fairly nicely here.
God, that hurt. Jesus, just fell right on my ankle. Um, but yeah, great. I mean, well done. Love the packaging from this year. And that, I mean, I think we'll be saying that for years and years to come about how Camacho's really kind of leads the way on really unique,
Let's
over the
just
top
say
packaging.
21 is going to be a pretty cool project too.
I'm excited. I'm
Pretty
excited.
cool
As
project. Different format as well. Not gonna be a
okay.
660. A different format. Not gonna be an 1118. So it will, it's gonna be a cool one. And then we've had, a couple of samples, and it's gonna be good.
Awesome. Can't wait for 2021. Most of us can't wait
Mhm.
for 2021 for a number of reasons.
I know.
But this 2020, probably one of the best things that come out of this year, considering
Yeah,
what a
exactly.
dumpster fire that 2020 has been.
Exactly. It's been a
So
crazy year, man.
if
What a crazy year.
absolutely, but that kind of brings us into our next segment, which is of course one of has become an audience favorite, which is our one must go segment. And of course, it's brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana and distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolera, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. Smoke one today and start living united. Now, for those of you new to our audience, and George, we've kind of talked about this a little bit before the show, but the point of this segment is I typically mold this around my guest, and sometimes digress off of it. But I thought tonight would be an interesting study in it, because I did it to your Davidoff colleague, Klaus,
Class.
Klaus Kellner, something similar on my last episode with him. So for before I'm going to I'm going to tee this up, and I'm going to participate. You're not on the hot seat by yourself here, okay? And for those watching from Davidoff or just fans of Camacho, George is not getting rid of anything. Okay, nothing's going to happen. All right, this is just for fun, and just for kind of discussion purposes. So I'm going to give you three things. Camacho related, and of course one has to go. Okay, so
Okay.
if you had, and you could, any theory goes. Like this can be from a Camacho business point of view. This can be from the ambassador point of view the title that you hold.
Mm-hmm.
This could be from a consumer perspective. However you want to frame it is completely up to you. So here are the three things, and one must go: the Camacho Corojo, the Liberty series in its entirety, or now you mentioned how Triple Maduro falls under this umbrella, but I'm strictly speaking to the barrel aged selections you do. So the American barrel age and the Nicaraguan barrel age. Now I picked these specifically, and I knew this was going to be really hard. We talked about an
Also,
18-year run.
Nicaraguan
No, and American, both of them,
American.
They're kind of
Okay,
lumped together.
got
So,
it. Yep.
so this is a really difficult task here because Corojo is the iconic brand, the Liberty series, 18 years. And I know what a fan you are of the American barrel aged. So I
Yeah.
know this is going to be a hard pick for you, but one must go. George, which one is it?
So I think I'll probably go and think a little bit on the business side of things, right? Like as a sustainable company. I think it would probably have to be the Liberty.
Ooh.
You know, I think it'll probably have to be the Liberty,
Oh,
just
man.
because the Corojo is the backbone of the company, right? Camacho
Right.
does not exist without Corojo, right?
Fair enough.
The American barrel age has been such a success, one of my favorite ones too. And it's just the what we've done with that project has been outstanding. And then Liberty, well, Liberty because it's a limited edition, right? In terms of production and everything, I think it'll probably be the one that it's gonna go, you know, and just
Okay.
for purposes of this little challenge that we have.
Yeah.
I think it'll be I think it would be the Liberty.
Okay. So don't freak out, everybody. The Liberty's
freak
still
out.
staying.
Yeah.
Yes, this is just for fun.
2021 still in the works.
Yeah,
Don't
there we
worry.
go. Yeah, exactly. It's coming. It's coming. We're not reversing
Yeah.
course here. So it's interesting you mentioned the Liberty because as I was kind of framing this together tonight, and I was thinking about my answer, and it's interesting that you said the Liberty because and we were talking about price a moment ago. If you wanted to argue something, the Corojo is the backbone, and spoiler alert, I'm not picking the Corojo. I'm with you on that. You can't get rid of the backbone of the company. It's just no, sorry,
Yeah.
that's just not going to happen. And but to that other point, the Liberty doesn't fit into that mold because we were talking about that reasonable price point that Camacho lives within. That 7 to 12, even the limited series that you guys do is about the wheelhouse for a cigar smoker these days. I mean, it's pretty damn attainable.
Yeah.
So the Camacho Liberty definitely falls out of that. So I can definitely see how it doesn't necessarily quote unquote fit. Right.
Yeah, because we only make 2,000 boxes.
Right.
You know, that's the just the size of the Liberty. So we do it more of as an honor to what we've been doing for the past, almost 2 decades now. It doesn't really represent a huge, it's not going to spike any numbers in terms of sales. It's
Right.
more of a paying an homage to the Liberty, which is.
And you guys kind of went this new, you took Camacho to the next level with the barrel age series stuff, right? The American barrel age, the Nicaraguan barrel age. This was kind of the next level of the progression, if you will, of the brand, right? So, and then you guys and then you have the distillery series that you guys have launched as well for the other brands.
Yeah.
And so the concept is sound, obviously, and it has worked, and you guys have kind of melded that into your core lines too. So for me though, it was a toss up between the Liberty and the barrel age, and because of what you guys have been able to do, it's kind of hard to go back and erase it. So I'm not suggesting to erase it, but because of what you guys have been able to do with your core lines and the barrel aging thing, I kind of said to myself, one must go. I think the barrel age has to go because I just can't see getting rid of an 18-year plus history of something, just calling it quits one day. I just
And that's why I said I should go the business route.
Right.
right? Just what makes sense financially, for example, um, just because I just in terms of just throwing numbers out there, if American Barrel Age is probably 5-6 times bigger than Liberty per se, So that's in terms of business,
Yeah.
it's just, hey,
Now
we're
the
here to sell cigars.
right, and the
you know.
American Barrel Aged Toro specific. That's
Oh,
you've been on record that's
yes,
that's your go-to.
yes.
That's your jam.
The Toro, and then we have these artisan sizes too, which is a short torpedo. We have the Perfecto Gordo, and then the Torpedo Largo as well. Now, I would love to, if we had a American Barrel Aged Churchill, right? That would be
Right.
my go-to.
There's your road
We
trip
we
cigar.
exactly, we don't. So my only other option is the Torpedo Largo, right?
Mhm.
Which is it's just a 7.25, if I'm not wrong, torpedo. It's bold, it's got all the flavor profiles of the American Barrel Aged. It's just long, you
Yeah.
know. You're smoking that thing for an hour and 15 minutes, no problem, But yeah, but the American Barrel Aged Toro, it's my favorite one out of the line.
Awesome. Well, that was our
Mhm.
one must go segment. Thanks for participating in that, George. And so never fear, Camacho fans. That's none of these is going anywhere.
Yeah,
These are staples now.
yeah. This was just
Um,
for the show purposes.
exactly. So of course, the one must go is always brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana and distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. Smoke one today and start living united. So George, I like to bounce around with timelines, and we really we started talking about the latest and greatest from Camacho with the new Nicaragua that we smoked earlier, and now we've lit up our Liberty series, and as we kind of get into the meat of our Liberty cigar here, I think it's a good time to kind of go back, and it was just something that really fascinating about your background, which is really interesting to me because you're the brand ambassador for Camacho, which the foundation and backbone of it, as we mentioned, is Corojo, which is
Hmm.
Honduras, right? Honduran tobacco is the backbone of Camacho, and you, of course, grew up in Honduras.
Yes.
You were born in the United States,
Yep.
but you moved to your family moved you all to Honduras at a very young age. So you grew up into your teens in Honduras,
Yeah.
and so kind of in a I guess a summary of statement here, George. I mean, what was it like growing up as a child in Honduras?
Well, it was. I mean, I didn't know any better. I moved from the U.S. Down to Honduras like you said, at a very young age. At the time, my father was a diplomat. Right, he was the French consul in Honduras. So it was pretty cool, and I do recall my family is not in the tobacco business at all, right?
Mhm.
But my father has been an aficionado. Actually, we were discussing. He's 92 years old, right? And he started smoking cigars when he was about 40. So later on in the game, right? But then he's been smoking
But still
cigars for
longer than all of us
50
combined.
plus years, right? So I remember growing up and having an array of different sizes and boxes of cigar boxes that I had at my disposal to build my little houses and my little things and my whatever. I would put my toys in them. So there was always cigar smoke, cigar lighters, cutters, my father would do in terms of pairings. He loved rum with cigars, right? So rum and coke and his cigars, blah blah blah. And I remember he would smoke Epicure, Hoya de Monterey Epicure, the Honduran ones, right?
Okay.
And I particularly love the shape, the rectangular shape of those. It must have been a double Corona that he smoked, because of the rectangular long shape of the boxes that I had, plenty of. Um, and just going with him into this humidor, which later on I found out that it was a bank, that this store took over a bank, and then they put the humidor inside this vault of the bank. So at a very young age, I went in there. I'm like, wow, this is where they have the cigars, and with that big, steel door and everything. It was very, very cool, and
Yeah.
always like going inside the humidor, and then first of all the smell, right? That smell, that cedar smell, smell of tobacco, right, in there, and also the temperature. Honduras is hot, man. It's very hot, right? And when you go into this humidor, inside this vault, and it's nice and cool in there, it
Yeah.
always, it triggered memories in my mind that I'll never forget. Just having the big boxes. I would go a few times a week with my dad into this place, buy these cigars, and later on he would, wake me up to go to school with, like, always a cigar in his mouth. My dad would wake up at 4:30 in the morning to literally cook food for the dogs. He would prepare these big soups of things, of the leftovers from the night before for the dogs, blah blah blah. And you just have, I always had cigars around me. Mind you, we didn't have anything to do with cigars in terms of business. But I grew up in a city called San Pedro Sula, which is about six and a half hours north of Danlí, which is the epicenter of the cigar industry in Honduras, right? Um, Now in Danlí, it's just completely different because it's a small town, right? It's safe. It's beautiful. You're in between all these hills. Um, and I later on, so I've been in the industry for about 16 years, right?
Right.
And going to see where the cigars were made and how the cigars were made in Danlí. That is one thing that my father actually has never been to a farm,
Oh, okay.
right? And I've been for the past few years. This year, I almost had it, thanks COVID. I was gonna take him to our farm so he could experience, what it is that he's been smoking for the past 50 years, right? That didn't happen. We'll see. Hopefully next year we can make that happen. But yeah, just the and it's funny because he was always looked at as like a weirdo, basically, because in Honduras, it's not a cigar smoking country per se. It's not like in the Dominican Republic where people smoke cigars and all this stuff. In Honduras, no, there's basically there's probably a couple cigar stores in Honduras that carry cigars. So it's not part of the culture for people to smoke cigars, not like in Dominican Republic. So it was very interesting to grow up in that, having a father that would smoke these big double Coronas, and everybody would be like, "What the hell is he doing?" You know what I mean? So he was always looked at as a weirdo, but now he's known in our city like the cigar guy, right? Yeah, so that's one thing that I was always around cigars. We are not a cigar family business at all. But it was just it's very interesting to have grown into the scent and all that, and it's very interesting, man. I'm glad I was everything worked out the way that worked out. Which let me tell you, my father is pretty proud of what I do, and an avid cigar smoker. He smokes Camacho all the time. I'm able to
Oh, okay.
to send them some boxes because he's like, "Oh, why didn't you send me from the factory?" No, it's a free zone. It doesn't work that way. So they have to come here, and then from here I have to send them back to Honduras, right?
Oh,
And then also there's no, like, for example, in my city in San Pedro Sula, I don't think there's even one cigar shop. So it's not, like I was saying, Honduras is not a cigar. It's a cigar producing country, but it's not ingrained in the culture to
yeah,
smoke
it's not a
cigars.
cigar smoking one. Yeah.
No,
So,
it's not, and also has to do a lot with religion, right? Honduras is a very Catholic country, so obviously they don't see this as the best thing. So it's not, it's not part of the culture. Obviously, that you have the higher class people that they have a little bit of world in them, and then of course they enjoy these masterpieces and but it's not part of the culture. So it's growing up in Honduras, and in my time, it was only my dad that would smoke cigars, and at some point I was even like, why do you even do that? That's really like the only person that we know that smokes cigars. But he learned in his circle of friends, and being obviously a diplomat and everything, and he would play tennis in the tennis after their matches and whatever. They would get the scotches and the cigars and all that stuff, and I would go and be part of these things at a very young age, and I was like, wow, what the hell are all these old men doing? Drinking and smoking cigars and stuff. But I thought it was pretty cool. So it's and I've been in the industry for 16 years, man. So it's and I'll probably be doing this for a long time now.
So this kind of fast forwards to a question I was going to ask. I want to get back to your childhood in Honduras, but
Yep.
with your dad being such an avid smoker and everything, I mean, and not being, as you mentioned, not being part of the industry. I mean,
Mhm.
does it really make him really proud to see his boy?
A hundred
Um,
percent.
well, that's
A hundred
awesome.
percent. 100%. He's really proud of it. And then, when I get to able to, when I'm able to explain to him things of the blends and this, and then just, he's always trying to give me some ideas, marketing ideas. Obviously, his mind is 92 years old, right? So
Hmm.
he does not understand social media and all that stuff. So he's always trying to, he calls me. He's like, hey, you guys should do this or that, or if he finds if he sees a product on the newspaper that is pretty cool that could be integrated with cigars, he sends me he tells my sister to take a picture to send me the picture of the newspaper where he saw it. So he's always involved. So he's very proud of what I do, which is it's very rewarding for me.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
So growing up in Honduras, so like you, George, you and I are similar age. We're in our mid
Yeah,
30s.
yeah.
And so, I mean, you grew up in the 80s and
Hmm.
90s in Honduras. You came back to the United States in 2000.
In 2000.
So, I mean, back in the 80s for back in the 80s, for the most people who may not be familiar with like Honduran history, Honduras in the 1980s, the United States actually established a military presence in Honduras to support El Salvador,
Hmm.
the Contra guerrillas. They were fighting the Nicaraguan government at the time. You know, they wanted
Yep.
to, yeah, because of all that duress in Nicaragua that took place in the 1970s and through the 80s and everything. So there was this U.S. presence and everything, and you know, and what I mean with all the kind of unrest and everything that was kind of going on, as a child, were you kind of aware of any of this was going on, or was it, again, were you just a child and you just had, did your
Well,
father and mother kind of keep it away from you, or?
I was to a point, but we did have an instance where I mean I wouldn't be alive, right? If these people had gotten their way. At some point, I think that turmoil was going on, and and France apparently somehow became an ally of some sort of situation, right? And my father being a consul, he became a target, and they actually dropped a bomb and two grenades in my house, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So my sister was in the living room and I was just roaming around between rooms and whatever, blah blah blah. And within a matter of 2 minutes, I went into one of our rooms where my mom was, and then my sister was with her boyfriend in the sofa, and then they went to her room. But this all happened in a matter of minutes, right? And then right when they went into to her room, they dropped a bomb and two grenades into the house, and then
Oh
we
my
had like
gosh.
these the glass shade, the blades, the window. I don't know if you've seen them. They're
Yeah.
glass, right? So obviously the grenades broke through that. They were inside the house, and then they exploded inside of our living room where my sister was maybe 4 minutes prior to that, five
Oh my
minutes
god.
tops.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
And
growing up, and
she's obviously okay though, right?
yeah, she's fine. She's
Okay.
fine. But that was always in our mind that it's like what. So I do recall I would have to double check the facts of the timelines and stuff like that. But yeah, there was turmoil growing up. Obviously, my father was a target, and at some point, France did something that it was not okay with some Honduran people, and then that's what they ended up doing this. Everybody's okay. Actually, one of our dogs became blind after that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But yeah, so those are some of the recollections that I have, from all this turmoil that was going on. And I just remember the what do you call the estrellas, the when the grenade detonates. Anyway, so these things were like inserted into like the speakers, into the
Oh, like the
walls.
shrapnel you're talking about?
Yeah, everywhere. I was like, wow, it was just crazy. And then the police and everything. I was just wow, it was just overwhelming. I have like vivid memories of the situation. Then it was explained to me that was because of that turmoil
Mhm.
that was going on.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
it's pretty crazy, man. It's funny that you asked that.
Well, so I mean, coming full circle though, and now being part of Camacho, which obviously celebrates the at least in part some of the beautiful parts of Honduras, and there
Yes,
are beautiful parts of the Honduran people and the culture and everything. So I mean, it must be really rewarding in a lot
it's
of ways.
rewarding, and I'm proud of the brand that I represent. You know what I mean? Growing up in Honduras, moving here, getting involved in the cigar industry, then obviously starting to work for a giant like Davidoff, for example, and then within the organization represent a Honduran brand, well established, badass Honduran cigar brand.
Hmm.
It's a perfect combination, man. It's a perfect
Awesome.
combination. So I'm very proud of what we do in Honduras in our factory, and I'm grateful for God to give me the opportunity of working for a brand that connects to my roots. So
Right, right.
when I go down to Honduras, obviously I'm from there. I grew up. The slang and everything is just I'm like I'm like a pig in shit when I go down to our factories. It's
Well,
outstanding.
if that's not enough, of course, a few years later, just before you left, actually, you know, another horrendous incident occurred. Of course, this wasn't man-made. This was,
Mhm.
Mother Nature, unfortunately, and Hurricane Mitch, which came
Yeah,
through in
that was
1998.
in that was in '98, man. I recall that it was crazy. A lot of people that I just it would just be a lot of people on the newspaper, right? My parents would always read the newspaper. Back then, that's what it was: TV or newspaper. There was no apps that would tell you the news and all that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But near our home, it's there was a river, right? And people would try to cross the river and they would drown, or cars would go through the river and they would drown, blah blah blah. So there was a lot of that. And then there was in our area there was a lot of bananas plantation,
Hmm.
right? Just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres of bananas, right? That we would go to this country club that my father used to play tennis, and then for a long time we were not able to go because it was entirely flooded. So it
Right.
flooded and flooded entire communities, and and Mitch lasted for so long, and it was such a wet storm that it was almost impossible for the water to drain. So that's the other thing. It was not like the winds and all that stuff. It was just the tremendous amount of water, and then that created the Honduras is just it's stuck back in the '80s when it comes to electricity, right? So it's all generated by this dam, La Represa del Cajon, and then that thing overflowed. It didn't overflow. They had to open it because if not, it was going to overflow it, and it was going to break, and then it's going to be a horrible damage. But then they opened it to release some of the water, and then that water flooded entire communities that were just they vanished because of this water. So that the Hurricane Mitch, it was just crazy. Actually, there was a still is to this day, 22 years later, there's this scar on the mountain, right in our city, El Merendon, that you can see. It was a mudslide, a landslide that is just it looks like a scar. And then everybody that remembers that they remember that happened during Mitch, right? So I don't know how big this thing is, but you can see it. It's a
Incredible.
huge scar that you can see from afar, but this is you see it tiny, but it's huge. I don't know the size of that thing, but yeah, man, it left a lot of we personally didn't have any problems, my family or anything. But yeah, I just recall this kind of tension between the city because we couldn't do anything, we couldn't go anywhere. There was no electricity for a very very long time. I'm talking about a few months without
Yeah.
electricity. And then when it would come back, they would actually advertise in the newspaper a schedule. You know, we would get 4 hours of electricity, and then it would be gone for 8 hours. And then one of the days, for example, once a week, you would have no electricity at all. And then that went on for a while. So
Right.
that
Right.
triggered me being a what was it, 12, 13 years old, blah blah blah. to go out, in the at nighttime and hang out with the neighbors with like candles and stuff like that. And that was our normal,
Right.
for a
Wow.
while. At that point, 2-3 months, you don't. But your perception of time when you're that young, it's like you don't know. So to me, it was like, wow, like this is it. That like we're living in a world where we get electricity 4 or 5 hours a day, and then that's it. It was pretty shocking, man. It was pretty crazy. It's funny that you mentioning these things. I don't talk about these things too much because nobody asked.
Well,
But it's funny.
well, I'm really thank you so much for being so candid about everything here, George. I mean, this is really, a walk through history.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and you lived it. I mean, and the Honduran president at the time, Carlos Roberto Flores, said that basically 50 years of progress had been reversed because of this one
Yes.
storm. It's 70% of the country's crops were eliminated.
Yeah, because of the waters. It was such a wet storm.
Not to mention the transportation, the infrastructure, 80% of it gone, roads gone.
Yeah.
And that's always been the thing. I haven't been to Honduras, but I've been to the Dominican, and people have told me, and I haven't been to Nicaragua either, but I'm like, what's, for my friends and colleagues in cigar media and consumers who have had the privilege of going to all three, cigar producing countries, like, oh, what's the difference between, they're like, well, let's say, oh, the DR's like this, and Nicaragua's like that, and they're like, Honduras is the roads, there are no roads essentially, and it's still, I mean,
Still to this
1998,
day.
22 years later, and they're still rebuilding from one storm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy because all that was, 50 years of progress, right? That got to build, the infrastructure of a already weak country, because the corruption of the politics and all that stuff, it just deviates the money from where it should go. And then to come back from it with this corrupt government, it makes it even harder.
right.
It just, and it's crazy. For example, from well, now from Tegucigalpa, which is the capital of Honduras, to my city, San Pedro Sula, they managed to build a highway, right?
Hmm.
And apparently, I haven't driven it yet because I usually fly from Tegus to San Pedro, but I haven't driven it yet. But apparently, it's this beautiful state-of-the-art highway. From Tegucigalpa to Danli, it's still this road that they've been trying to fix it for the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years.
Right.
It's this just one lane, road on each side. And then if you have a landslide or something that blocks it, you're pretty much, you're screwed, right?
Hmm.
And it's everything happens there very slow, but when it comes to infrastructure like roads and stuff, it's even slower, right? They're planning on making it better and all that stuff, but I just don't see that happening, anytime soon. They're working on it, but it's just very slow. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the only thing that is kind of hectic. I mean, the scenery is beautiful,
Oh,
but
it's
it's just
gorgeous.
kind
I've
of
seen pictures. It's a
yeah,
gorgeous country.
it's kind of hectic going from Tegucigalpa to Danli because of the roads, right?
Right.
And then there was what were they doing the other day? There was some sort of turmoil with they were like hijacking the roads or whatever it was, and then they
Right.
had the carretenes like checkpoints and whatever. So those are even more delays. And then when they try to fix the road, because since it's the only road, it's the Pan American Highway. If they're fixing something, so then it becomes a one-lane highway, and then you have all the semis that are going from country to country, and it becomes a nightmare. So yeah, that's the only thing. The road from Tegucigalpa to Danli, it's still a mess. It'll probably be a mess for a little while. You know.
Now, is your
Um,
father retired, or is he still a diplomat?
no, no, no. He retired years back, probably a
Okay.
good 10 years ago. Yeah,
So
yeah. No, right.
was he still in office, or was he still a member of the diplomatic corps in 2007 when the coup d'état happened? Or no, that was in 2009. Excuse me.
No, no.
When Zelaya was
Yeah,
removed
with
from
when
power.
when Mel Zelaya, no, 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 no. He was
He was
no,
retired then too.
he probably retired about 15 years ago.
Okay.
15, about 15 years
So
ago.
just before that occurred.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah,
But
Hmm.
he still calls San Pedro Sura home.
Yes, he's been there. Wow. He saw the best of Honduras, right? He moved down to Honduras when Honduras was just this beautiful country, very underdeveloped, right? And
Hmm.
he came with, he had lived in Canada. He had this hustle mentality that he had, with all his struggles and in France and stuff like that, and throughout. And then he moved to Mexico and blah blah blah, all that stuff. So he really enjoyed Honduras, at its prime. I think he moved down to Honduras in 57 or something like that,
Oh, okay.
1957, 1960, something like that. So, and then obviously he was this French guy, so he had it's very appealing and all that stuff, and that's how he got into the whole diplomatic thing, just because of his persona, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, he still lives in the same city. He goes around and he mentions a couple of things here and there that it's like, wow, like just the development of the city. Now I remember some of it, but imagine him, that
Yeah, it's
he's in the
completely
city.
different
Yeah,
at
it's
its
just it's crazy,
finest
man.
to nothing. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, let's end this trip down memory lane a little with a high note here. I mean, what growing up in Honduras. I mean, I grew up in El Paso, Texas. My mother's side of the family is Mexican. I grew up with very iconic dishes that I still love today, and they're still what is the at the Rami house? What's the dish you remember from your childhood that you used to eat and love?
Ah, man. Well, Honduras has this traditional dish called the baleadas, right? Which is a flour tortilla or like the refried beans and eggs or maybe chorizo and then so the baleadas with like a white cream. So baleadas, it was just part of the daily uh pretty much menu, right?
Yeah.
Because you could get them at the little the corner grocery store. Everything was fresh and it's just something that is very cheap, right? So everybody had access to it or has access to it up until this day. And it's funny when I take all the American people that go down to Honduras and they're like, "Wow, this is freaking delicious." It's just simple. It's a tortilla with refried beans. If it's in the morning, then you have obviously with eggs or chorizo, and then the beans, the it's like our sour cream, like queso crema. Um, but yeah, that, and then we have this other sort of pastry, which is they're called semitas, which is like a
Oh,
sugar,
samitas. Yeah, yeah.
the
Okay.
semitas, right? So the semitas, and then you dip them in Honduran coffee. Those are the things that I recall. That it's just I grew up with them, and it's just been obviously everything else. Honduras is very Americanized when it comes to the at least their food, right? So the rest of the stuff is very traditional. It's nothing crazy, but the baleadas is something that is very Honduran, right?
Yeah.
And the semitas as well. And then sometimes the semitas we would because my family was in the honey business, so I would put a little bit of the semita with
Oh,
honey
absolutely. With
on
the
it,
honey, yes.
and it's outstanding.
That's
Some
awesome.
fresh
Yeah.
honey. Yeah, so baleadas and semitas, man. That's what was my takeaway from my childhood over there. Baleadas, Jesus, I've eaten so
Well,
many
a-
baleadas.
as I mentioned, my mother's side being Mexican, my grandmother used to go to the same bakery, and there's all these Mexican pastries that I grew up eating that I love. But one of the things that was interesting about this bakery to this day is still owned by a family who's Honduran. And so
Okay.
I grew up eating samitas too. So I knew exactly what you're
Oh
talking about.
my God,
So,
yes,
yeah, so it's interesting.
delicious,
It's
man.
yeah, and until you just said that, I had no idea that samitas were Honduran, but
Yeah, and
that all clicked right now. I'm like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, that's awesome.
and then it just when you get them fresh from the la panaderia, the bakery,
Hmm.
right? That they make them, right
Oh,
there. That's just, oh my God, it's
nothing
it's
beats
an
it.
outstanding feeling, man.
Yeah.
Oh, delicious. And with coffee, it's just that's. I mean I was a fan. I'm still am, but I can't find it here. A fan of we had a soda over there called Banana Tropical, right? And it's just
Okay.
this just a soda that's banana flavor, but that with the semitas, oh, And again, it's very accessible. It's cheap, the semitas, so I
Yeah.
would get a whole bag of semitas, which is probably, 12 semitas for, I don't know, 50 cents, a dollar, if that, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
and
less.
they'd sell that shit for $12 here in the U.S.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course,
And we think
yeah, but
they
it's
think Americans would think they're getting a steal out of it. It's crazy. Yeah,
exactly.
like how
Yeah, but it's so good, man.
how tacos are so cheap to make and yet they're like $5 now. It's
Oh my God.
ridiculous. It's so
I
stupid.
know. I know. Crazy.
So, so George,
Hmm.
this is the time of night where I always thank my guests because I know how late it is. And you have goodness gracious, you have a 4-month-old asleep in the next room,
Yeah. Oh
and
my God. It's 1 a.m. here almost.
you really appreciate the family time that you're sacrificing to sit down and have a conversation with me. So I really appreciate it. So I just have two more questions. One's just
Yep.
the last one, and then of course our curveball segment that we talked about. But so the latest FDA decision that came down from the court saying basically that, to sum up, it basically puts a substantial equivalence on the back burner, basically indefinitely puts it on hold, which was a huge win for the premium cigar industry, big and
Yep.
small, from Davidoff to the smallest boutique, a great win for
Yep.
the industry. And so does this decision, again, I know these decisions are made above you and everything, but
Hmm.
do you feel like this decision, the latest FDA decision, really opens up the doors for what you can do creatively? Possibly, this is me personally crossing my fingers and hoping a comeback of diploma, maybe, or something. I mean, does this?
Yeah. Everything. If it makes sense financially, and we play it safe, right? So
Mhm.
we, throughout the FDA, I think we're one of the few companies that is fully compliant, right? All of our SKUs are registered, so we were ready, right? If shit was gonna hit the fan, we were 100%
Yeah.
ready.
Hmm.
Now with this, we've gotten so used to being ready, and we have, pretty much tweaked our business model within the guidelines. I think if we go and venture off into something new, it'll be something small, right? Cool, but I don't think we're gonna go back to having, two, three releases a year and stuff like that, just because it's just, we've done so much legwork to be fully compliant that it was paused indefinitely, but it'll come back around, right?
Right.
One way
Okay.
or the other.
That's
One way or the
fantastic.
other.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
So yeah, one way or the other, it'll come back around. The government needs their money, and then they saw an avenue, and then it'll come back around. Um, but yeah, it was just everything. It just moves. Davidoff is such a big company that everything moves slowly, right? So if it's gonna move slowly, we can't steer the ship, fast enough if we were to go back to compliance. So it means that we would be throwing money away if we had to remove something from the market. We don't want to get into that situation, right?
Yeah.
And then that goes back again into why we're reinforcing our core, right? The DNA, the backbone, the foundation of the brand. That is our
Hmm.
main focus now. So
Right.
that's basically what our take on that. Yeah, that now we can explore in a few things, but our initiative is not going to go back to where it was back in 2013, right?
Gotcha.
2014. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
been it's been so much that we've had to do, and I've personally been involved with a lot of the just registering the SKUs and cleaning up, going through all of our SKUs and organizing them. It's just a lot of legwork that it's already been done, and why go and destroy everything that has been done. But then again, I mean, like you said, those decisions are made way up, in the food chain.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I don't think we're gonna go crazy to try to exploit this little gap of time that we have, right?
Gotcha. No, it
No,
totally makes sense.
yeah,
Um, but I'm on record. Original diplomas. I would love to see them come
yeah.
back. So, so the latest marketing tagline, and it's been around for a while now, but the tagline for Camacho is "Live Loud," and that
Hmm.
kind of leads us into our curveball segment, which is I've got it designated as a three-parter. Okay, so we really didn't dive too much into when you first started into the industry as a retailer, but I'm interested if you could. We're going to take the term "Live Loud" and your exploits and everything. With Jack Heyer in the chat earlier talking about the greatest drinker of all time and stuff. But you're that notwithstanding, if George Rami had to describe what living loud was when you first started in the industry to when you were what you defined as living loud at when you first started with Camacho in 2013 to what George Rami lives loud today in 2020. So let's start at the beginning. How did George Rami live loud when you first started in the industry as a retailer?
Well, I mean, it was 16 years ago. You know, I I was in the retail business, right, in Miami, and in a very high traffic area in Coconut Grove, and it was a very small store, but all the reps wanted to be there, right, have their products in the store. And this store was crazy. I was able to, hire a couple of my friends under me to help me run the store, and pretty much the owner, which later on became my business partner, let me do pretty much whatever I wanted there, right? So it was just this having all the reps come in and brand owners and everything, and just hearing all these stories of them traveling all over the country, for example, right, to
Mm-hmm.
all these events and all the festivals and this stuff. And I was always like, wow, that sounds outstanding, I want to go there. Obviously I couldn't do it because I was 18, whatever it was at the time. And I was doing my thing at the store, so I didn't have obviously the budget to go and travel to go to all these festivals that I would hear about, right? But we would rage in the store, right? So it was a very fun time. Actually, I still with some of my friends that used to work with me at the store. We still reminiscing on these moments, right? It was probably
Yeah.
some of the best times of my life. Um, then I started with so I did my retail years, became a partner. We opened up another store in Brickell, right, done in Miami as well. And like any relationship had its ups and downs, but the downs were more than the ups, and I ended up just kind of moving away from my partnership there. And then I went, but at this point I would get the reps and everything. I would still hear these stories, right, of these places that they had been, and all these festivals and all this stuff that I wanted to experience. But no, the only thing that I could experience was, going to Vegas. And even then it was just, on a budget, because we were a small store and blah, blah, blah. But once I came with Davidoff, and then the idea was to go and explore the entire country, to go and showcase this badass brand, that changed the dynamics of my thinking, right? Like, and that all of a sudden being, from being in Miami, stuck from, working, 10, 12 hours a day at a store, to travel the entire country, just throwing parties, living
Riding
loud,
motorcycles,
riding
driving a semi.
motorcycle, yeah, with models and everything, and parties and the drinking and all that stuff. It was just like, wow, it was outstanding. And obviously all that, progressed, and it had its moments and a climax when I was doing the road tours, which that was like the pinnacle of my living loud moments. When I had like you said, the motorcycles, had the big ass truck with the trailer and everything, and it was just La La Land for me. Um, then I like anything, man, and one of the things that I always picked up from these guys that would come into the store with and tell me all these stories and all that stuff, is like, being on the road is tiring. I was like, what do you mean tiring? I want to be out there, blah blah blah. Yes, it gets to you, being on the road. At some point I was, I think I traveled probably, I think that I accumulated about 180 nights in a hotel room at some point one of the years.
Jeez.
Great for points and stuff, but but it got tired. It got tiring, and then I wanted to slow it down a little bit, and then eventually I started doing some other things, and eventually I moved here to Tampa, which I'm here in the office now. And I'm part of the creation of the campaigns, and then just pretty much, instead of just being the face of the brand out on the road, now I am part of, or try to be part of the creation of the campaigns and things
Right.
that we're doing, right? So that it's always rewarding for me, because I know the market very well. I know the retail side very well. Uh, just like I know how to deal with people. So to create something that is catered to that other side that I'm really good at, it's very rewarding, right? Um, and now, how I live loud now, that's a tough one, because right now with a baby and everything, all my
Oh, it's pretty
glamour,
loud. It's just a different type of
it's
loud.
a different type of loud. Yeah. So all the glamour and all the obviously with COVID and everything, I haven't been able to travel, but just the life how I was living it, prior to the baby, has changed, right? But I always try to, put a smile and do my thing. But it's just right now things are very tame. But I'll be back. I'll be back on the road. I'll be back doing my thing. I just gotta let the baby, grow up a little bit, and
There you go.
I can't leave mama with the baby by herself. I know it's a full-time job and then some.
Good man. Good man.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, man.
Well, George, I am eternally grateful for the amount of time you've given me tonight. It was such a pleasure to sit down with you and talk about what Camacho's doing these days, and to kind of explore your background and your history, and the, you know full circle, man. Growing up in a country that is the backbone for the brand that you represent. I mean, it's
Yes.
just it's a beautiful story, and was really excited to sit and talk with you about it, and I'm eternally grateful. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate our audience too for staying with us, man, staying late. This was fantastic, a
Yeah,
great
man.
night, and I really want to thank them as well. And George, again, I can't thank you enough for sitting down with me. So
No, thank you for having me, man. Thank you for having me. I
absolutely,
know I know I reached out to you a while ago, and we finally were able to, lock it down and make it happen.
absolutely.
It's very grateful. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoy the cigars. Picked up a couple of things on that you didn't know about me or the brand and stuff like that. So
Oh,
I
absolutely.
love doing this, man. So if we can collaborate later on in the future, by all means, the doors are open. I really thank you for having me on the show.
I'm humbled by that. Thank you, George. And again, thank you to our audience as well. This is where we're going to wrap up our 141st take here. I can't believe I've done 141 of these, and this has been a fantastic journey. Get to talk to great people like George, and to all our audience who are tuning in live on Facebook, we really appreciate that. Go to our Facebook page. We've got our list of upcoming guests, including next week, which is my birthday episode. We'll be celebrating my
Oh, wow.
birthday. William Cooper will be stopping by along with Miguel Shodell of Crowned Heads and John Carney. We mentioned him earlier of La Flor Dominicana will be kind of featured on that episode. And we'll be talking about a lot of things. It won't be all about this guy, but we are celebrating my birthday, and I'm excited to have some good folks to toast my birthday with, and
That should
smoking
be a
good
fun one.
cigars. It will be fun. It'll be fantastic. If you
That's
guys
awesome.
check out wherever we listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, including iHeartRadio. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review. And if you already are a subscriber, don't forget to unsubscribe, but please, please, please don't forget to resubscribe. That really helps my numbers and allows me to keep getting great guests like George on each and every single week. So also check out our Facebook page, ELOSOFUMAR, for upcoming guests, as well as our YouTube page, ELOSOFUMAR 2, as well. We've got some great guests coming up. I mentioned just a few just a moment ago. But we'll also have Jason Loyce of Veritas Cigars coming up, Tim Wong to celebrate our 3rd anniversary of ELOSOFUMARTAKES, Justin Andrews, Sam Spencer, Alec and Bradley, and Alan Rubin, all on the slate in upcoming weeks. Be sure to stay tuned on our page for the upcoming schedule. You definitely will want to check it out. So for everyone out there, I'm Bear Duplessis, live from the HF Barcelona studios of Euless, Texas. This has been our 141st take. So guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.